Chapter 4185. Qiu had the strength of the third great supreme god layer, so he could kill cultivators of the fourth great supreme god layer. No wonder he had been sent flying by Qiu. Qiu hadn't used his full strength. Of course. 200 years ago, you gave me those treasures and I was about to break through. As expected, I broke through not long after. In the past 200 years, I've been refining those treasures and my cultivation has advanced by leaps and bounds. I've reached the third great supreme god layer and learned a few powerful secret techniques. Qiu smiled, showing his sharp fangs. Lu Ming was really happy. Last time he had exchanged so many broken weapons for Qiu. It had been worth it. Now Qiu would definitely be a great help to him. Besides, he only knew that Qiu's cultivation had advanced a lot, but he didn't know whether Qiu's ability to fight against people with higher cultivation levels had improved. According to Qiu's experience of refining the broken spear, Qiu's ability to fight against people with higher cultivation levels should have improved. That way Qiu's fighting strength would be even more unpredictable. However, the stronger Qiu was, the better. Qiu has reached the third great supreme god layer. I'm still stuck at the ninth great supreme god layer. I need to find a way to break through. Lu Ming frowned. He had a strong sense of urgency. Before, Lu Ming didn't feel much urgency because his fighting strength could continue to improve. But now he couldn't. His fighting strength had reached the limit. No matter how much he cultivated, he could only fight against people with higher cultivation levels. He couldn't improve anymore. How could Lu Ming not feel a sense of urgency? If he didn't break through now, he would be wasting time and others would catch up to him. For example, Qiu's cultivation level was much higher than his. The other geniuses would also improve by leaps and bounds if they had a fortuitous encounter. If I want to break through, I need to go out and gain experience. I'll go to the Heavenly Palace and see if there are any missions. I can complete them while gaining experience. I can also earn some merit points, Lu Ming thought. After making up his mind, Lu Ming left to see if there were any suitable missions. But halfway there, Lu Ming stopped and took out his identity medallion. Because he had just received a message from his identity medallion. There's a mission, what a coincidence. Lu Ming was slightly stunned. He was rather surprised. This was because the Heavenly Palace's higher-ups had sent a message to Lu Ming from the identity token. It had to be said that this was very coincidental. Lu Ming had just come out of seclusion not long ago, and just as he was about to go and accept a mission came. According to the quest, Lu Ming arrived at a large square. When Lu Ming arrived, he saw a group of people gathered in the square. These people were divided into groups of about 10 people each. They are all first-class heavenly soldier. Lu Ming discovered that almost all of these people were wearing golden heavenly soldier armor. They were all first-rate heavenly soldiers. Most of the first-grade heavenly soldiers were at the God the Arch realm. There were about 12 first-class heavenly soldiers in a batch. In front of a group of first-rate heavenly soldiers stood a figure wearing purple gold battle armor. Divine General. The one in the violet gold armor was a Divine General. In front of a Divine General stood 12 first-rate heavenly soldiers. Lu Ming looked over and saw at least a dozen batches of first-rate heavenly soldiers. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. What kind of mission was this that required so many experts? More than a dozen batches of people, all first-rate heavenly soldiers or Divine Generals. This was more than 100 Divine Emperor experts. You come here, over here. When Lu Ming arrived, a Divine General swept his gaze over Lu Ming and waved at Lu Ming. Lu Ming flew over and found that there were only 9 heavenly soldiers in front of the Divine General. Lu Ming landed in the middle of the 9 first-rate heavenly soldiers. No one said anything and they waited quietly. Lu Ming didn't say anything either. Although he didn't know the details of the mission, he believed that he would have an answer in a while. As time passed, more and more people came. Soon, 12 first-rate heavenly soldiers were gathered in Lu Ming's group. Not only that, but there were also Divine Generals and other first-rate heavenly soldiers. In the end, a total of 18 teams were gathered. Each team was made up of 1 Divine General and 12 first-rate heavenly soldiers. Alright, almost everyone is here. Now, let me tell you about the next mission. At this moment, one of the Divine Generals spoke. Lu Ming could tell that the Divine General was from the Heavenly Human Tribe. Only 2 of the 18 Divine Generals were from the Heavenly Human Tribe. The status of the Heavenly Human Tribe's Divine General was naturally higher than the others. Everyone looked at the Divine General of the Heavenly Human Tribe, waiting for him to continue. Next, our mission is to hunt down the traitor. The Divine General of the Heavenly Human Tribe said. Hunt down the traitor? Is there a traitor in the Heavenly Palace? Everyone was shocked and each of them revealed a look of surprise. During the Heavenly Palace era, the Heavenly Palace ruled the primitive universe, and there were very few traitors. That was because once there was a traitor, it was equivalent to courting death. They couldn't escape the Heavenly Palace's pursuit. We're willing to serve the Heavenly Palace with our lives. A first-rate heavenly soldier shouted. He was already flattering the divine general. However, most of them remained silent. Very well. The traitor we're going to hunt down is called Divine Lord Dream Void. The Heavenly Human Tribe's divine general continued. What? Divine Lord? He's a divine lord. Heavens, aren't we courting death by hunting down a divine lord? Before the Heavenly Human Tribe's divine general could say anything, someone shouted in shock. Even if the others didn't say anything, they still inhaled sharply. They looked shocked. The traitor this time was actually a divine master. Moreover, if they were to hunt down a divine lord, would they not be courting death? They were only god emperors. No matter how many of them there were, they would still die if they faced a divine lord. What's the rush? Do you think we don't know how powerful a divine lord is? Isn't it a joke to ask you to hunt down a divine lord? The Heavenly Human Tribe's divine general shouted coldly. The others calmed down. Indeed, it was impossible for the Heavenly Palace to allow them to pursue and kill divine masters, because it would be completely useless, other than sending them to their deaths. Even among Divine Lord experts, Divine Lord Dream Void is an extremely powerful existence. However, we don't have to worry about that. Divine Lord Dream Void will naturally have a corresponding expert to deal with him. Our target is Divine Lord Dream Void's disciples. Although Divine Lord Dream Void's disciples don't have very high cultivation bases, they're all extremely talented. We can't let them go. Do you understand? The Heavenly Human Tribe's divine general said. Understood. The others replied and sighed in relief. If it was just Divine Lord Dream Void's disciples, it was still fine. This time, we're not the only ones hunting down Divine Lord Dream Void. There are others as well. We're mainly going to surround some routes and not let them escape. Divine Lord Dream Void has brought a few disciples and is heading toward the Burning Heart Star Zone. We'll depart immediately and head there. The Heavenly Human Tribe's divine general said. Understood. The others replied. Chapter 4186. The Burning Heart Star Zone was an extremely high-level star zone. It was vast and boundless, more than 100 times larger than the Iron Sea Star Zone. During this time, all the wormholes in the Burning Heart Star Zone had been sealed off by the experts of the Heavenly Palace. Lu Ming and the others spread out in the Burning Heart Star Zone, each team guarding a direction and slowly encircling the core area. As soon as God Lord Dream Void and her disciples appeared, they would charge forward and annihilate them. At this moment, in the northern region of the Burning Heart Star Zone, several figures were rapidly flying. There were 4 of them, all of them women. One of them was a middle-aged woman, and the other 3 were young women. If Lu Ming were here, he would definitely be stunned. This was because one of the 3 young women was none other than Chiu Autumn Moon. Chiu Autumn Moon was one of God Lord Dream Void's disciples. The middle-aged woman was none other than God Lord Dream Void. God Lord Dream Void was extremely powerful. She used a beam of energy to carry her 3 disciples through the void at a speed faster than teleportation. Countless planets were left behind. However, God Lord Dream Void's expression was still grave. She knew that her whereabouts had been exposed, and the Heavenly Palace would definitely send a large number of experts to kill them. Whether or not they could escape was another matter. My 3 disciples, I've implicated all of you this time. God Lord Dream Void sighed as she flew. No, Master, what are you saying? Master's will is our will. If not for Master, I would have died long ago. Senior sister is right. Since the Heavenly Palace is so despicable, we naturally don't need to serve them. It's normal for us to leave. We will definitely support Master. Chiu Autumn Moon and the other 2 nodded repeatedly, expressing their support for God Lord Dream Void. Good disciple. However, the danger this time is unpredictable. If you encounter any mishap, try your best to escape. Don't worry about me. Especially you, Chiu. You have a very important mission. Nothing must happen to you. You must be able to rush to that place. You must hurry. Master? Autumn Moon's eyes were slightly red. To be honest, when God Lord Dream Void forcefully brought Autumn Moon to the Heavenly Palace, Autumn Moon was disgusted and unwilling. Especially after she asked around and learned that Lu Ming was trapped on the Dragon Clan's home planet. She wanted to go to the Dragon Clan's mother planet to look for Lu Ming many times, but she was stopped by God Lord Dream Void. However, apart from this, God Lord Dream Void was indeed very good to her. He treated her like his own daughter and taught her everything he knew. He also gave her all kinds of treasures and resources. As time passed, Qiu Yu's resentment towards God Lord Dream Void naturally dissipated. After all, the human heart was made of flesh. You betrayed the heavenly palace and still want to escape? How naive. At this moment a cold voice sounded. Then the void shattered. A long spear pierced through the void and pierced towards Divine Lord Dream Void. Terrifying, incomparably terrifying. When the spear pierced out, it was as if it had pierced a hole in the entire universe. Around it, stars were annihilated one after another. Even a few stars were extinguished directly. This was the attack of a God Lord. It had the power to destroy the world. Divine Lord Dream Void's expression changed. Her body emitted a rainbow-colored light. Then she pointed a finger. A rainbow-colored finger force burst out and collided with the long spear. Boom. It was as if the universe had exploded. A large area of the starry sky turned into chaos. Countless stars were annihilated under the terrifying force. Terrifying, incomparably terrifying. Fortunately, the nearby planets were not inhabited by life. Otherwise, that move just now would have annihilated countless living beings. Buzz. The long spear kept vibrating. It flew back and was caught by a large golden hand. Then a burly figure stepped out of the void. He held a long spear in his hand. His golden hair fluttered in the wind. His terrifying aura made large areas of the starry sky tremble. On the other side, Divine Lord Dream Void's body swayed. At the same time, she used a rainbow-colored light to protect Qiu Yu and the other two. If it were not for Divine Lord Dream Void's protection, the three of them would have died under the terrifying force. Yi Shen, Lord of Heaven, you came personally. Divine Lord Dream Void's expression changed when she saw the person in front of her. Her cold voice was filled with seriousness. Yi Shen, Lord of Heaven. Even among God Lords he was very powerful. He was not weaker than her. Dream Void, why did you betray the Heavenly Palace? Did the Heavenly Palace mistreat you? Yi Shen, Lord of Heaven said coldly. His battle intent was wild. A terrifying aura spread out, causing the stars in the starry sky to tremble. Yi Shen, you should know better than anyone what the Heavenly Palace has done. You should know better than anyone what the Heavenly Palace treats the various races of the universe. Do you think I should continue to stay in the Heavenly Palace? Divine Lord Dream Void asked coldly. Yi Shen, Lord of Heaven's face darkened. It seems like you know a lot. If that's the case, I can't let you live. Dream Void, hand over the Master God's heart and I'll give you a quick death. Otherwise, you should know what the Heavenly Palace is capable of. If you want to fight, then let's fight. You want the Master God's heart? Impossible. Divine Lord Dream Void said coldly. As soon as she finished speaking, she took the initiative to step forward. The rainbow-colored light on her body became even more intense. Moreover, 3 of the lights were the most intense. They were thousands of times brighter than the sun. Dream Void, Divine Finger. Divine Lord Dream Void said softly. She pointed a finger. A finger filled with rainbow-colored light formed. It was huge, even bigger than when it was formed. It crushed toward Yi Shen, Lord of Heaven. Wherever it passed, the void turned into chaos. Everything was turned into nothingness. Divine Lords were just too powerful. They were almost at the peak of the universe. Moreover, Divine Lord Dream Void was no ordinary Divine Lord. You're courting death. Yi Shen, Lord of Heaven said coldly. His body was shrouded by the terrifying power of the heavens. His spear was like a saber as it slashed down. The spear expanded rapidly. It traversed through the universe and collided with the rainbow-colored finger. Boom. There was an even more terrifying explosion. The void was completely annihilated. Nothing was left. Divine Lord Dream Void and Yi Shen, Lord of Heaven's body shook at the same time. Then they started fighting again. At the same time, a force enveloped Qiu Yu and the other two. With a toss, the 3 of them appeared billions of miles away. Let's go. Go to that place. Send the Master God's heart there. Divine Lord Dream Void's voice rang in the ears of Qiu Yu and the other two. Master. Qiu Yu and the other two exclaimed. Their eyes were filled with tears and worry. Let's go. I'll be fine. You guys stay. I still have to take care of you. Let's go. This is my order. Divine Lord Dream Void shouted. Master, take care. You have to stay alive. Qiu Yu and the other two gritted their teeth and turned to leave. They also understood that if they stayed, they would be a burden to Divine Lord Dream Void. They would not be of any help. Chapter 4187. Godly Lord Dream Void and Yi Shen, the Lord of Heaven, were fighting fiercely. Qiu Yu and the other two continued flying as fast as they could. At the same time, Lu Ming and the others also received the news. The traitor has appeared. Godly Lord Dream Void has been stopped by Yi Shen, the Lord of Heaven. Only her 3 disciples are left. Let's go. It's time for us to make a contribution," said the Divine General of Lu Ming's group. His eyes were shining brightly. That Divine General was one of the 2 Divine Generals of the Celestial Human Clan that Lu Ming had seen before. He was extremely strong. Nobody doubted him. They followed the Divine General of the Celestial Human Clan into a wormhole. A moment later, they appeared in a strange starry sky and quickly flew in a certain direction. They were all great supreme gods, so they were extremely fast. They were even faster than some short-distance teleportation portals. Normally, great supreme gods would carve short-distance teleportation portals on their bodies. They could activate the portals on their bodies to teleport a single person. However, when one reached the God Emperor realm, such a short-distance teleportation array carved on one's body would no longer be of much use. This was because God Emperor realm existences could break through the void and travel through space at full speed. Their speed was much faster than activating the short-distance teleportation array on their bodies. Not to mention, activating the teleportation portals on their bodies took time. They continued to move forward, leaving a large number of stars behind them. They crossed one galaxy after another. Boom, boom. Suddenly, explosions sounded in front of them. Beams of light flashed and collided with each other. It was like a star had exploded, illuminating the sky. Even from far away they could see it. "We're here. Godly Lord Dream Void's disciples have been stopped. Let's kill them. Remember, they might have the Heavenly Palace's treasures. If we can get them, it'll be a great contribution," Celestial Clan's Divine General said, revealing an excited expression. He flew with all of his strength, his speed even faster, flying in that direction. The others also sped up. 4th Great Supreme God Layer. Lu Ming was surprised. He could see that the Divine General of the Celestial Human Clan had the strength of the 4th Great Supreme God Layer. Usually, ordinary godly generals had the strength of the 3rd Great Supreme God Layer. That guy had the strength of the 4th Great Supreme God Layer, so he was an extremely strong cultivator. As for the other celestial soldiers, they had the strength of the 1st or 2nd Great Supreme God Layer. None of them had the strength of the 3rd Great Supreme God Layer. Lu Ming measured his combat strength. He was considered the strongest in this team. If he used his full strength, he wouldn't even be afraid of the immortal general of the heavenly human tribe. This thought only flashed through Lu Ming's mind. Soon they approached the battlefield. They could already see the figures in the battle through the collision of the multicolored light. On the periphery was a group of heavenly soldiers and divine generals, numbering about 30. Lu Ming estimated that there should be 3 teams, 3 divine generals leading 36 first-class heavenly soldier. It was 3 young women who were besieged by the celestial soldiers and divine generals. When he saw one of the women, Lu Ming was shocked. Autumn Moon. Lu Ming almost cried out in surprise. Fortunately, he managed to hold it in. He had never thought that he would meet Autumn Moon here. He had never thought that Autumn Moon would be one of the people he wanted to kill. What a shitty mission. At this moment, Lu Ming directly forgot about the Heavenly Palace mission. He only had one thought in his mind, and that was to save Autumn Moon. Calm down. Lu Ming took a deep breath to calm himself down and analyze the situation. The 3 teams besieging Autumn Moon were very strong. 3 divine generals, 2 of them had the strength of the 3rd Great Supreme God Layer, and the other one had the strength of the 4th Great Supreme God Layer. There were 36 first-class heavenly soldiers, all of whom had the strength of the 1st or 2nd Great Supreme God Layer. They were all wearing first-class heavenly soldier armor, which could block a full-strength attack from a cultivator of the 3rd Great Supreme God Layer. Their defense was strong enough, so they only needed to attack crazily. That way they would be a great threat. Lu Ming looked at Autumn Moon and the other 2. To be honest, Lu Ming was also surprised by Autumn Moon and the other 2's cultivation. Because Autumn Moon and the other 2's cultivation had reached the Great Supreme God Layer. They were all in the 1st Great Supreme God Layer. After a few hundred years, Autumn Moon's cultivation had increased so much. She had already reached the Great Supreme God Layer. But on second thought, it was normal. After all, Autumn Moon was the disciple of the Great Lord Dream Void in the Heavenly Palace. Previously, he had heard from the Heavenly Human Tribe that the Great Lord Dream Void was very strong even in the Great Supreme God Layer. Although she was not from the Heavenly Human Tribe, she had a lot of power in the Heavenly Palace. Under the guidance of such a person, and with the vast resources of the Heavenly Palace, it would be hard for her not to improve. Most importantly, Autumn Moon's talent was not to be underestimated. She had the 9 orifices sacred heart. Lu Ming was not a newbie who had just arrived in the primitive universe. He had looked for clues about the 9 orifices sacred heart. Although there were not many clues and there was no detailed explanation, he could infer from the few words that the 9 orifices sacred heart was a rare talent. It was rare in the history of the universe. It had unlimited potential and was unfathomable. Moreover, it was extremely strong. That was the truth. At this moment, Autumn Moon and the other 2 were surrounded by dozens of strong cultivators. If it weren't for Autumn Moon, the 3 of them would have been defeated. Qiuyu was enveloped by the 9-colored light. Every move she made was filled with immense power. She was holding a machete which was emitting terrifying energy waves. When she slashed, a 9-colored machete light was released. It cut the space and broke the starry sky. She was fighting against the divine general of the 4th great supreme god layer. At this moment she was not at a disadvantage. Such fighting strength. To be honest, even Lu Ming was amazed by Autumn Moon's fighting strength. Without a doubt, the machete in Autumn Moon's hand was a great weapon. However, even if she had a great weapon, it was still incredible for a cultivator of the 1st great supreme god layer to fight against a cultivator of the 4th great supreme god layer. Lu Ming knew the difference between the 1st great supreme god layer and the 4th great supreme god layer. The 3 levels of the great supreme god layer were equivalent to the 9 levels of the godly emperor layer. In other words, Autumn Moon had relied on a great weapon to fight against a cultivator who was 9 levels higher than her. She was not much weaker than Lu Ming. The 9 orifices sacred heart was indeed extraordinary. Autumn Moon blocked the cultivator of the 4th great supreme god layer. The other 2 women joined hands to block the others' attacks. Without a doubt, the 2 women were peerless geniuses. They were extremely talented. They were not any weaker than the candidates of the Universe Young Geniuses list. They also controlled great weapons to block the attacks of the other strong cultivators. It had to be said that there were too many geniuses in the Heavenly Palace. Not to mention the Heavenly Human Tribe, even the core disciples of the Heavenly Palace had many geniuses. Luckily, the core disciples of the Heavenly Human Tribe and the Heavenly Palace didn't participate in the Universe Young Geniuses list. Otherwise, there would be a great change in the rankings. Chapter 4188. However, even though the 3 of them managed to block the attacks of the Heavenly Soldiers and Divine Generals, it was almost impossible for them to escape. This was because Divine Generals had armor at the Divine General level, and first-class Celestial Soldiers had armor at the first-class Celestial Soldier level. Their defensive power was too strong. They blocked all directions like turtles. With their strong defensive power, they blocked all escape routes. They wanted to surround Autumn Moon and the others and wait for reinforcements from the Heavenly Palace. In that case, Autumn Moon and the others would die. Lu Ming and the others arrived. On the other side, the 3 of them, as well as the Heavenly Soldiers and Divine Generals, also noticed Lu Ming and the others. Their feelings were completely opposite. Qiuyu and the other 2 had ugly expressions as their hearts sank. If this continued, it would be very disadvantageous for them. The Heavenly Soldiers and Divine Generals were overjoyed. "Come over and kill them." One of the Divine Generals shouted. "Kill them. Don't let any of them go." The Heavenly Human Divine General who led them shouted and rushed toward the battlefield. Lu Ming and the others followed closely behind. Lu Ming remained calm and collected. He sped up silently and approached the Heavenly Human Race God General, waiting for an opportunity. Soon they were close to the battlefield. "Kill." The Heavenly Human Divine General shouted and a saber appeared in his hand. He injected powerful energy into the saber and was about to slash at Autumn Moon. At this moment, Lu Ming's eyes lit up. The time had come. The Bingxian rod appeared in Lu Ming's hand. The forbidden energy poured into the Bingxian rod and then he swung it at the Heavenly Human Divine General. To catch bandits, one had to catch the leader first. Naturally, one had to attack the strongest person. The most important thing was to kill the Heavenly Human Divine General. The other first-class Heavenly Soldiers were nothing to be afraid of. It happened so suddenly that the other first-class Heavenly Soldiers were stunned. They never thought that Lu Ming would suddenly attack the Heavenly Human Divine General. Even the Divine General of the Celestial Tribe himself was completely stunned. This scene was beyond his expectations. He wanted to block or dodge, but it was already too late. Boom. The mysterious ice staff crashed toward the Heavenly Human Tribe Divine General's head with terrifying power. The terrifying power caused the Heavenly Human Tribe Divine General's expression to change drastically, revealing a look of horror. However, just as the Bingxian staff was about to hit the Celestial General, the Celestial General's battle armor emitted a dazzling glow. A light shield emerged and blocked the Bingxian staff. With a boom, the Celestial Race's Divine General was sent flying like a meteor into the distance. He spat out large mouthfuls of blood and his face was pale. Although his battle suit had blocked the attack of the mysterious ice rod at the critical moment, his divine body was still injured by the powerful force. It can actually protect itself. Lu Ming frowned. This scene was beyond his expectations. With such a good opportunity, Lu Ming suddenly attacked. He thought that he would be able to deal with this heavenly human race divine general. Who would have thought that the other party's armor would be able to protect him on its own? The first-rate heavenly soldier armor on his body did not have this function. Could it be because of the divine general's armor? Or because the other party was from the heavenly human tribe and his armor had been specially refined? Kid, you're courting death. You're courting death. At this moment, the heavenly human tribe divine general finally reacted and let out a hysterical roar. He was furious, extremely furious. He was filled with anger and killing intent toward Lu Ming. Just now he had almost been killed and felt the threat of death. He had never experienced such a feeling before. At that moment he was shrouded in endless fear. Therefore he wanted Lu Ming to pay 1,000 times the price. Although he did not know why Lu Ming attacked him, it did not matter. As long as he attacked him, he would have to pay the price. Kill. The heavenly human tribe divine general roared. His battle saber rapidly enlarged and his body moved, charging toward Lu Ming. The saber light broke through the space and slashed toward Lu Ming, wanting to cut Lu Ming in half. Come on. Lu Ming was not afraid at all. His powerful taboo force continuously surged into the Bingxian rod and he struck it out. The two huge weapons collided in the air, creating a deafening explosion. Then Lu Ming's body shook and he could not help but retreat. Lu Ming was no match for the heavenly human tribe divine general. The heavenly human tribe is really strong. A thought emerged in Lu Ming's mind. With Lu Ming's current fighting strength, he could definitely fight against a cultivator of the fourth great supreme god layer after using the mysterious ice rod. However, the fourth great supreme god layer naturally referred to the ordinary cultivators of the fourth great supreme god layer, not the monstrous geniuses. The heavenly human tribe was too talented. Even the ordinary heavenly human tribe members were geniuses compared to the other tribes in the universe. The heavenly human tribe members were usually stronger when fighting against cultivators of the same level. The heavenly human tribe divine general with the strength of the fourth great supreme god layer was stronger than the ordinary cultivators of the fourth great supreme god layer. It was normal that Lu Ming was not his match. Lu Ming was pushed back. A first-class celestial soldier behind him attacked Lu Ming with his axe. He wanted to attack Lu Ming by surprise and curry favor with the heavenly human tribe divine general. Even though he did not know why Lu Ming had suddenly attacked the heavenly human tribe divine general, it was always good to curry favor with the heavenly human tribe. That first-class celestial soldier had the strength of the second great supreme god layer. He was very strong. However, compared to Lu Ming, there was still a big gap between him and Lu Ming. Lu Ming's eyes were cold. He did not turn his head. His back lit up and a beam of light shot out. It was the Great Aurora technique. All kinds of secret techniques were distributed in Lu Ming's body. He could attack from any part of his body. The Great Aurora technique was like a divine blade. It struck the heavenly human tribe divine general's axe. With a loud bang, the heavenly human tribe divine general's axe was sent flying. The Aurora technique did not stop. It continued to attack the heavenly human tribe divine general. Oh no, block it for me. The heavenly human tribe divine general turned pale with fright. He had not expected that Lu Ming would still be able to use such a powerful attack after being pushed back. He was no match for Lu Ming at all. At the critical moment he could only use his armor to block the attack. The Great Aurora technique bombarded the heavenly human tribe divine general's armor and sent the heavenly human tribe divine general flying. The heavenly human tribe divine general's armor dimmed. The heavenly human tribe divine general's eyes were filled with fear. If it was not for the heavenly human tribe divine general's armor, he would have been killed. Lu Ming retreated a distance and steadied himself. At this moment, the people on Autumn Moon's side also came to their senses. The three people on Autumn Moon's side were very curious. They did not understand why the heavenly human tribe divine general's side would suddenly have a conflict. Lu Ming was in his current body. Of course, the three people on Autumn Moon's side did not recognize Lu Ming. Traitor. The heavenly human tribe divine general who was besieging the three people on Autumn Moon's side were furious. Lu Ming's action was clearly a betrayal of the heavenly palace. Let's attack together and kill this traitor. The heavenly human tribe divine general who was sneak attacked by Lu Ming roared and once again charged at Lu Ming with his saber. Cold murderous intent flashed in Lu Ming's eyes. He held the Bingxian staff and charged forward. With a loud bang, Lu Ming retreated again. Qiu kill. The moment Lu Ming retreated, Lu Ming's wrist shook and Qiu flew out. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 4189. After exchanging a blow with the heavenly human race's god general, Lu Ming released Qiu the moment he retreated. As soon as Qiu flew out, it turned into a black spear and stabbed at the heavenly human divine general. It still stabbed at the heavenly human divine general's armor. Boom. There was an earth-shattering explosion. The celestial race's divine general was blown away. His armor shook, but unfortunately it wasn't broken. The divine general's armor was too strong. It was much stronger than a first-class celestial soldier's armor. A first-class celestial soldier's armor could block a full-strength attack from a cultivator of the third great supreme god layer, while a divine general's armor could block a full-strength attack from a cultivator of the sixth great supreme god layer. Even though Qiu's attack was strong, it was much weaker than a cultivator of the sixth great supreme god layer. What a strong defense. It's like a turtle shell. Son of a turtle, I'm coming. Take one attack, two attacks, da-da-da. Qiu shouted and charged at the celestial race's divine general. He turned into a black spear and attacked the celestial race's divine general. You're courting death, shouted the celestial race's divine general furiously. He had been blown away. He was furious. His eyes turned red. He wanted to cut Qiu into pieces. He used his full strength to attack Qiu. He waved his saber and attacked Qiu. The saber and the spear collided. There was a loud explosion. In the blink of an eye they had exchanged more than 10 attacks. In the end, the celestial race's divine general was suppressed and kept retreating. How is this possible? This is impossible, shouted the celestial race's divine general. His cultivation level was one level higher than Qiu's, but he was suppressed. He wasn't from an ordinary race. He was from the celestial race. There weren't many celestial race members, but they were extremely talented. Even the most ordinary celestial race members would be considered geniuses in the universe. However, Qiu was able to suppress him. How was that possible? However, the truth was cruel. He was suppressed by Qiu. Qiu's ability to fight against cultivators of a higher level has improved. Lu Ming was relieved to see Qiu's strength. He was overjoyed too. If the difference between each level of the Great Supreme God layer was measured by the Divine Emperor layer, one needed to be able to fight against cultivators of a higher level. The celestial race's divine general was extremely strong. Qiu could still suppress him. Lu Ming estimated that Qiu could fight against cultivators of at least 6 levels of the Divine Emperor layer. Qiu's was at most 4.5 levels. This time he had refined quite a few precious damaged divine weapons. In particular, there were a few damaged divine weapons worth 1,000,000 merit points, which were of great help to Qiu. Then, Tian's Qiu's Xian Bing. Qiu's. Lu Ming used his full strength to activate the mysterious ice rod. His fighting strength had the strength of the fourth great supreme god layer. Those first-class celestial soldiers couldn't resist him. They were all blown away. Their first-class celestial armors dimmed down as they were badly injured. Brat Muyun, you're digging your own grave. How dare you betray the heavenly palace? When the other experts from the heavenly palace arrive, you'll be dead. The divine general of the heavenly human clan roared. Really? Qiu, force him to the battlefield over there. Lu Ming sneered and then transmitted his voice to Qiu. All right. Qiu replied loudly. Its attacks became even more ferocious, causing the heavenly human tribe divine generals to continuously retreat toward the battlefield on the autumn moon's side. Muyun, I have the divine general armor. You can't do anything to me. As long as I can stall you, you will die. The divine general of the heavenly human clan roared. He fought back with all his might. He didn't want to win. He only wanted to stall Lu Ming and the others. However, he wasn't Qiu's match. He kept retreating. Soon he was close to the battlefield on the autumn moon's side. Do you think that you can stall us with the divine general armor? You've probably forgotten that the heavenly palace has a treasure called the Forbidden Weapon Area Seal. Lu Ming sneered. A jade talisman appeared in his hand. It was the Forbidden Weapon Area Seal. When Lu Ming was at the Merit Exchange Hall in the heavenly palace, he had exchanged for a few Forbidden Soldier Domain talismans. Initially, he had thought that he would not need them and had only kept them for emergencies. Unexpectedly, he could use them so soon. It was the perfect time to use the Forbidden Weapon Area Seal. It's the Forbidden Weapon Area Seal. The divine general of the heavenly human clan was shocked when he saw the Forbidden Weapon Area Seal in Lu Ming's hand. With a loud bang, Lu Ming crushed the seal of the restricted soldier realm. The restricted soldier realm spread out rapidly, shrouding not only the heavenly human tribe's divine generals, but also Qiu Yu and the rest, as well as the heavenly soldiers and divine generals who besieged Qiu Yu. After being enveloped by the forbidden weapon area, the divine weapons in the hands of the divine general of the heavenly human clan and the armor on his body quickly lost their luster. They couldn't be used anymore and automatically hid themselves. The armor and weapons of the heavenly soldiers who were attacking Autumn Moon and the others couldn't be used either. Of course, there was also a problem. The ultimate weapons in the hands of Autumn Moon and the other two couldn't be used either. Qiu kill. The moment Lu Ming crushed the forbidden weapon area seal, Lu Ming shouted and dashed out like a bolt of lightning. He didn't charge towards the divine general of the heavenly human clan, but towards the heavenly soldiers who were attacking Autumn Moon and the others. Lu Ming's body was covered in a dazzling light. He was using all his strength. In the process of rushing out, his figure suddenly disappeared from the spot. It was the greater teleportation technique. When he reappeared, he was already around Autumn Moon and the others. Boom boom, Lu Ming attacked with all his strength. His fists were like mountains as they bombarded the heavenly soldiers and divine generals. Without the protection of their armor, the first-grade heavenly soldiers couldn't block Lu Ming's attacks. Even without his ultimate weapon, Lu Ming's fighting strength was almost comparable to the third great supreme god layer. His attacks were extremely powerful. 4 or 5 first-grade heavenly soldiers didn't even have time to scream before their bodies exploded. They died on the spot. On the other hand, a few fists were aimed at 2 of the third great supreme god layer divine generals, blocking their attacks. As for the 4th great supreme god layer divine general, Lu Ming didn't attack him. He would leave that one to Qiu. Qiu's fighting strength came from his own body. He didn't rely on external forces. The moment Lu Ming attacked, Qiu attacked as well. His body rapidly changed again, turning into a long sword. Lu Ming had exchanged a few broken weapons worth 1,000,000 merit points last time. One of them was a broken sword. After turning into a long sword, the sword slightly trembled and then disappeared. It wasn't the greater teleportation technique, but a phenomenon caused by moving too fast. This time, Qiu didn't attack the heavenly human clan's divine general, but another 4th great supreme god layer divine general, the one who had attacked Autumn Moon at the beginning. Chapter 4190. The godly general who had fought against Qiu Moon wasn't from the heavenly human clan, so he wasn't very strong. He only had the strength of the 4th great supreme god layer, so he was weaker than the godly general of the heavenly human clan. Qiu's sword appeared in front of that person and slashed at his head. That person was startled and hastily tried to defend himself. However, he couldn't use external strength. Not only was his defense weakened, but his attack power was also weakened. He couldn't block Qiu's attack. Sword light flashed and the godly general's attack was destroyed. Then blood splashed everywhere. A cut appeared between the eyebrows of that cultivator of the 4th great supreme god layer. The man's aura rapidly weakened. His eyes were filled with great shock and disbelief. In the next moment, the life aura on his body completely disappeared. He was dead. A godly general of the 4th great supreme god layer had been killed by Qiu instantly. Actually, if Qiu had fought against him directly, it would have been difficult for Qiu to kill him instantly, even though Qiu was much stronger than him. However, Qiu had been completely unprepared. Lu Ming had suddenly used the talisman of the forbidden weapon area to suppress the godly general's armor and weapon. Qiu had been fighting against the godly general of the heavenly human clan, but he had suddenly attacked him. Everything had happened too quickly. The godly general didn't have time to use his full strength, so he had been killed instantly. Clang. After Qiu had killed the cultivator of the 4th great supreme god layer, his sword shook slightly and then he moved towards the godly general of the heavenly human clan. He had to be quick. He had to finish the battle quickly. Lu Ming knew that there were too many strong cultivators from the heavenly palace this time. If they delayed any longer, other strong cultivators could arrive at any time. If they got entangled, they would be in trouble. As long as they could get rid of the strongest godly generals, the others would be easy to deal with. You want to kill me? Don't even think about it. The godly general of the heavenly human clan reacted quickly. He raised his sword to block. With a clang, he exchanged a blow with Qiu and retreated explosively. Qiu continued attacking. Die. Hurry up and kill them, shouted the godly general of the heavenly human clan. Die. 2 other godly generals of the 3rd great supreme god layer shouted furiously and attacked Lu Ming and Qiu Moon. Their battle armors were suppressed, but Lu Ming, Autumn Moon, and the others' killing weapons were also suppressed. They didn't believe that with their strength of the third great supreme god layer, they couldn't defeat Qiu Yu and the others. Two experts of the third great supreme god layer had attacked. Their power was terrifying and terrifying. Lu Ming's face turned solemn. "Stay behind me and block the attacks of the other heavenly soldiers. Leave these two to me," Lu Ming said. As long as he could delay these two for a few moves, he believed that Qiu would quickly end the battle. As long as Qiu finished the battle and came to help them, this victory would be theirs. "You don't have to do all of them. Give me one." A cold voice sounded. Lu Ming was very familiar with this voice. Naturally, it was from Autumn Moon. Autumn Moon stepped forward and her body was covered by 9 colored lights. At that moment, Autumn Moon shouted and pointed her finger. People could see that among the 9 colored lights on Autumn Moon's body, one of them was dazzling. It completely suppressed the other 8 lights. It was dazzling. That's... Lu Ming faintly saw a heart appear where Autumn Moon's heart was. That heart was different. It had 9 orifices. Each of the 9 orifices had a different color. At that moment, one of the orifices had a particularly bright color. It was the same color as the one outside. Whoosh! As Autumn Moon pointed her finger, a bright light appeared and turned into a finger pointing at the godly general of the third great supreme god layer. Boom! The two of them exchanged blows. The godly general of the third great supreme god layer's attack was blocked. Lu Ming's eyes twinkled. Even though Autumn Moon didn't have a great weapon, she was still very strong. She could block a godly general of the third great supreme god layer with just the strength of the first great supreme god layer. That was beyond Lu Ming's expectation. The 9 orifices' sacred heart was indeed powerful. Even though Lu Ming was observing Autumn Moon, he didn't stay idle. He kept punching the other godly general of the third great supreme god layer. Apart from those godly generals, the rest of the first-class celestial soldiers were nothing to worry about. Even though there were many first-class celestial soldiers, godly Lord Meng Su's 2 disciples could protect themselves. The battle was in a stalemate, but Qiu had the upper hand. Die, 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 die. Qiu shouted and started attacking crazily. The sky was filled with sword lights. It looked like a rain of swords was falling from the sky. The Heavenly Human Clan's godly general was completely on the defensive. Poof! Finally, the Heavenly Human Clan's godly general was hit in the chest by a sword light. Now, without the protection of the godly general's armor, the sword light pierced through the Heavenly Human Clan's godly general's heart, splitting it in half. The Heavenly Human Clan's godly general screamed and retreated, coughing up blood. Although the sword light couldn't kill him, it could still severely injure him and reduce his fighting strength. That was enough. He wasn't Qiu's match in the first place. Now that his fighting strength was reduced, he was even less of a match for Qiu. Kill him when he's down. Qiu wouldn't miss such an opportunity. After injuring his opponent with one move, his following attacks were even more violent. Whoosh! Whoosh! The sky was filled with sword shadows and sword rays. Each of the sword rays was billions of miles long, leaving long cracks in the starry sky of the universe. Poof! Blood splattered everywhere, flying 1,000,000 miles away. Then a head was thrown high into the sky. It was the Heavenly Human Clan's godly general's head. He had been decapitated by Qiu. He wasn't dead yet. His eyes were filled with fear and he wanted to escape. But Qiu wouldn't let him escape. With a swoosh, a sword light slashed across and split the Heavenly Human Clan's godly general's head in half. The soul inside was also destroyed. The Heavenly Human Clan's godly general had died on the spot. The other godly generals and first-class heavenly soldiers gasped with fear in their eyes. This was a Heavenly Human Clan's godly general. The Heavenly Palace would be furious if he was killed just like that. At the same time, they also wanted to retreat. Qiu was too powerful. If he attacked them, they would only die. Let's go. Let's go. The remaining godly generals and first-class heavenly soldiers retreated at the same time. They didn't want to fight anymore and flew in a direction. Don't even think about leaving. Qiu wanted to chase them, but Lu Ming stopped him. Don't chase a desperate enemy. Let's get out of here first. Lu Ming said to Qiu. Qiu flew back to Lu Ming's hand and turned into a bracelet. Who are you? Why did you save us? Qiu Moon and the other 2 women looked at Lu Ming curiously. They didn't understand why a first-class heavenly soldier from the Heavenly Palace would save them. He didn't hesitate to kill the Heavenly Human Clan's godly general and offend the Heavenly Palace. Besides, Lu Ming's fighting strength shocked them even more. They had clearly seen that Lu Ming had resisted the attack of a cultivator of the third great supreme god layer with the strength of the ninth godly emperor layer. It was incredible. Chapter 4191. Chiu Autumn Moon and the other two were puzzled. Why would this monstrously strong genius save them at the expense of offending the heavenly palace? Could it be that he admired their beauty? That was not impossible. After all, they were beauties that were 1 in a billion. Now is not the time to talk. There are many people from the heavenly palace this time. Let's leave this place first. Lu Ming said. Okay, let's leave first. This way. Chiu Autumn Moon nodded and flew in a direction. Lu Ming followed closely behind. Soon they left the area covered by the Forbidden Army domain. As soon as they left the area covered by the Forbidden Army domain, Lu Ming's first-class Celestial Soldier armor appeared. You have the first-class Celestial Soldier armor. As far as I know, the Celestial Soldier armor has a restrictive power that can control you. As long as the experts from the Heavenly Palace control it, you will definitely die. Chiu Autumn Moon said with a worried look in her eyes. She did not recognize Lu Ming. She just felt that Lu Ming had risked his life to save them. If he died in their hands, she could not bear to see him die. Don't worry, I have a way to break it. Lu Ming smiled. At the same time, he circulated the restrictive power and distributed it to every cell of his body. Soon, Lu Ming found the restrictive power on the Celestial Soldier armor. This power could also be distributed to every cell. If it were anyone else facing this power, they would be helpless. However, it was not a problem at all for the forbidden body. After finding this power, Lu Ming circulated the restrictive power and surrounded this power. Then he began to refine it. Soon this power was completely refined by Lu Ming. The first-class Celestial Soldier armor flew out of Lu Ming's body and was caught by Lu Ming. Once the restrictive power was refined by Lu Ming could no longer wear or use the Celestial Soldier armor. You actually broke free from the restraint of the Celestial Soldier armor? Chiu Autumn Moon and the other two widened their eyes in shock and disbelief. They had never heard of anyone who could break free from the restraint of the Celestial Soldier armor. In their hearts, Lu Ming was even more mysterious and unpredictable. Although Lu Ming was refining the restrictive power of the Celestial Soldier armor, they did not stop. Flying fast, they continued to fly in a certain direction. At the same time, Lu Ming put the Celestial Soldier armor into a storage ring. Brother, can you tell us now? Why did you save us? Chiu Autumn Moon asked. You? Lu Ming smiled and revealed his true identity. There was no need for Lu Ming to hide anything from Chiu Yu. He had no intention of hiding anything. As soon as he said that, Chiu Yu's body stiffened and her expression changed drastically. She stared deeply at Lu Ming with her beautiful eyes, revealing a cold, murderous intent. Whoosh! Chiu Autumn Moon's body emitted a dazzling light that slashed at Lu Ming. Lu Ming was shocked. He did not expect Chiu Autumn Moon to attack him. In a hurry, he blocked the attack and collided with the light. With a boom, Lu Ming was sent flying. Junior sister Chiu Autumn Moon, what's going on? The other two disciples of Lord God Dream Void looked at the scene in shock. They were also confused. They did not expect Chiu Autumn Moon to attack Lu Ming. Chiu Autumn Moon did not answer them. Instead, she stared at Lu Ming and said coldly, "Tell me, who are you? Why did you pretend to be my young master?" So it's a misunderstanding. Lu Ming was relieved. He knew that he had a forbidden body now. His life origin aura was completely different from before. It was no wonder that Chiu Autumn Moon would misunderstand. Chiu Autumn Moon, I am indeed your young master. Because I cultivated a special technique, my life origin aura has changed. Lu Ming explained. Life origin aura has changed? I have never heard of such a technique. You'd better show me evidence. Otherwise don't blame me for being rude. Chiu Autumn Moon said coldly. Her body was filled with cold-killing intent. Lu Ming smiled bitterly and said, Chiu Autumn Moon, we are from the Lu family of the Divine Wilderness continent in the Primordial realm. You grew up in the Lu family. Do you still remember that I was the one who helped you open your meridians? Lu Ming began to talk about the common memories of both of them. Some things were only known to Lu Ming and Chiu Autumn Moon. Chiu Autumn Moon listened carefully. However, the killing intent in her eyes did not fade. Instead, it grew stronger. Whoosh! Suddenly, Chiu Autumn Moon attacked again. A dazzling 9-colored light, beautiful and terrifying, slashed at Lu Ming's head. Chiu Autumn Moon used her killer weapon. A machete shrouded in 9-colored light. Its power was very terrifying. Chiu Autumn Moon, what are you doing? Why are you attacking? Lu Ming exclaimed. He had to use the mysterious ice rod to block it. With a clang, there was a violent vibration. Lu Ming blocked Chiu Autumn Moon's machete, and he himself also floated back. Tell me, who are you? What did you do to young master? Why do you have young master's memories? Did you search young master's soul? Chiu Autumn Moon shouted. Her killing intent was incomparably dense. A powerful aura locked onto Lu Ming, ready to launch a fatal attack at any time. Lu Ming smiled bitterly. Obviously, Chiu Autumn Moon still did not believe him. She thought that he searched Lu Ming's soul and obtained Lu Ming's memories. This kind of thing could happen. In the universe, this kind of thing was not rare. For a moment, Lu Ming did not know how to explain it. If he were in her shoes, he would not believe it so easily. Even the aura of a person's life origin had changed. A person's appearance, body shape, voice, temperament, and so on were easy to change. Only the life origin aura was difficult to change. Needless to say, it was a complete change. It was a completely different person. Anyone who encountered it would find it hard to believe. What? You can't say anything. Tell me, what did you do to young master? If you don't explain it clearly today, I will kill you. Chiu Autumn Moon shouted. As she spoke, tears were already rolling in her eyes. If someone had really searched Lu Ming's soul and even his most private memories had been obtained, it meant that Lu Ming was in grave danger. The odds were against him. Chiu Autumn Moon, I'm really Lu Ming. I'm really young master, Lu Ming said helplessly. Yes, he is Lu Ming. Chiu Autumn Moon, do you still recognize me? At this moment, a voice sounded. It was Chiu Chiu. Then Chiu Chiu flew out and turned into a round ball, swinging around in the air. You are Chiu Chiu? Chiu Autumn Moon's eyes widened in surprise. Chiu Autumn Moon of course recognized him. However, the battle just now was intense. Moreover, Chiu Chiu turned into a long spear or a long sword as soon as he attacked. It was completely different from before. Moreover, Chiu Chiu had swallowed a large number of broken divine weapons over the years, and his temperament had changed a little. Therefore, Chiu Autumn Moon did not look carefully before and did not recognize him at first. At this moment, Chiu Chiu had turned into a round ball. Chiu Autumn Moon looked carefully and immediately recognized Chiu Chiu. After all, Chiu Chiu's life origin aura had not changed. Chapter 4192. Yes, I'm Chiu Chiu. Autumn Moon, long time no see. Lu Ming has been looking for you all this time. Chiu Chiu's round body flew around Chiu Chiu as it spoke. Autumn Moon looked at Chiu Chiu carefully. Finally, her eyes were filled with surprise. She was sure that Chiu Chiu was not controlled and was free. So what Chiu Chiu said was true. Autumn Moon looked at Lu Ming again and said, You're really young master? Of course, silly girl. Lu Ming said with a smile. Yes, it's this smile. You're really young master. Young master, I finally meet you. Autumn Moon was pleasantly surprised. She flew up and threw herself into Lu Ming's arms as if she was unwilling to leave. She was too familiar with Lu Ming. Now that she had calmed down, she could feel from Lu Ming's smile that this was Lu Ming. The aura of life origin had changed, but the smile was still the same. Silly girl, let's leave this place first. The people of the Heavenly Palace will catch up with us soon. Lu Ming said. Yes. Autumn Moon nodded. They continued to fly in the direction they had just been. There was no time to chat. They could only talk about the details when they were safe. Autumn Moon had a lot of questions in her heart, but she could only keep them to herself for the time being. But this time they did not fly far before a team appeared in front of them. A divine general with 12 first-class heavenly soldiers. They're over there. Stop them. The divine general also noticed Lu Ming and the others and immediately shouted. Go over there. Chiu Chiu, you lead the way. Lu Ming shouted. He waved his hand and Chiu Chiu flew out. Don't worry. Leave it to me. Chiu Chiu shouted. It flew out and turned into a black spear. It pierced through the void and rushed to the front of the heavenly soldiers and divine general in the blink of an eye. Whoosh! The black spear pierced out, and the boundless power in the starry sky gathered. A huge primordial divine spirit was condensed. This primordial divine spirit was also wielding a black spear, which he swept out horizontally. The void shook violently. This black spear was even larger than a planet. It traversed the starry sky and pressed down on the 12 first-class celestial soldiers and one divine general. The godly general only had the strength of the third great supreme god layer. When he sensed how terrifying that attack was, his expression changed drastically. He shouted furiously, Activate your armor. Block it. Block it. The divine general desperately activated his divine general armor. The other 12 first-class celestial soldiers also desperately activated their first-class celestial soldier armor to block. Boom. The black spear swept out and 13 figures were sent flying like 13 rubber balls. The divine general was still all right. He had the divine general battle armor and his defense was extremely strong. Qiuqiu couldn't break through his defense and only sent him flying millions of miles away. However, those first-class heavenly soldiers were not so lucky. Their first-class celestial soldier armor was swept by the black spear and violently vibrated. Then it exploded. A few of the first-class celestial soldiers had suffered a stronger attack and their bodies had exploded and turned into ashes. Lu Ming and the others rushed over and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Haha, you can't even withstand a single blow. Qiuqiu was immensely proud of himself as he flew back to Lu Ming's side. Qiuqiu, Autumn Moon and the others looked at Qiuqiu curiously. Qiuqiu's fighting strength had surprised them. How could a metallic creature be so strong? Could it be a member of the imperial clan of the metallic creatures? Qiuqiu, Autumn Moon and the others couldn't help but think. The metallic creatures were one of the top clans in the universe, one of the 10 strongest clans. They were incomparably strong. Amongst them, the imperial clan of the metallic creatures were incomparably strong. Each one of them was a peerless genius. It was just that there were very few of them. At that moment, everyone's expression changed drastically. Because the void in front of them suddenly rippled like water. A terrifying aura spread out from there. This aura was too terrifying. It caused the surrounding starry sky and countless stars to tremble as if they were about to explode. Divine Lord. Lu Ming and the others' expressions changed drastically. This aura was definitely that of a divine lord. It was too terrifying. They were far from being a match. Let's go. Lu Ming roared, wanting to change direction and escape. You want to escape in front of me? How naive. A cold voice rang out. A figure suddenly appeared in the void. This figure had 12 wings on his back and his entire body was enveloped in pure white holy light. This was a divine lord of the angel race. The moment the divine lord of the angel race appeared, his aura became even more terrifying. Lu Ming and the others' bodies suddenly stiffened. Because the void had been completely sealed, under this terrifying aura, they couldn't move at all. Hand over the sovereign's heart, destroy your own cultivation, and follow me back to the heavenly palace to beg for forgiveness. The divine lord of the angel race said coldly. His body was incomparably huge. His head was comparable to a planet. Standing in the void, he gave Lu Ming and the others too much pressure. It's over. I can't move. Lu Ming roared in his heart. At this moment he wanted to take out the purple copper coffin, but he couldn't. Bone Demon, do you have any ideas? Lu Ming asked Lu Ming. No, I'm too weak. If I was at my peak I could kill him with a slap. But now you're on your own. Bone Demon said. Lu Ming was speechless. His mind was spinning rapidly to see if there was any way. You, Autumn Moon was about to shout, don't even think about making me hand over the sovereign's heart. But before she could do so, she was stopped by Lu Ming. Autumn Moon, I'll speak. Lu Ming transmitted his voice to Autumn Moon. Autumn Moon's voice came to an abrupt halt. Yes, we can hand over the sovereign's heart. But it's not in our hands. We've hidden it in a secret place. If you want it, we can bring you there. Lu Ming shouted. Although he didn't know what the sovereign's heart was, it didn't stop him from making things up. Brat, bring me there. If you dare to play any tricks, I'll make sure you die miserably. The divine lord of the angel race said. I won't lie to you. But I have a condition. Lu Ming said. Brat, you don't have the right to negotiate with me. Bring me there. The divine lord of the angel race said coldly. A divine emperor Brat wanted to negotiate with him? What a joke. I can only negotiate with you. The sovereign's heart is in the hands of a friend of mine. Even if you capture us and search our souls, it's useless. I've already transmitted my voice to him, telling him to take the sovereign's heart and leave as he pleases. I don't know where he is now unless I contact him personally. You can kill me and search my soul, but you can't force me to contact him. Lu Ming continued to make things up. He was stalling for time, hoping for a change. Otherwise, if the other party attacked directly, they would have no hope at all. Brat, you're good? The divine lord of the angel race's eyes were filled with coldness. However, he couldn't tell if Lu Ming was telling the truth. Chapter 4193. The angel race god lord couldn't tell if Lu Ming was telling the truth or not. Of course, he wouldn't completely trust Lu Ming, but if Lu Ming was telling the truth, then even if he captured Lu Ming and the others and searched their souls, it would be useless. Speak. What are your conditions? The angel race god lord asked. Very simple. I'll take you to get the Lord's heart, and you let them go first. Lu Ming pointed at Qiu Yu and the others. No, young master, Qiu Yu immediately panicked. No. The angel race god lord said coldly and domineeringly, none of you can leave. If you don't agree, you won't get the Lord's heart either. Lu Ming retorted. Capture you. I have plenty of ways to make you obediently lead the way. The angel race god lord's eyes flashed coldly as he stepped forward, his aura even more terrifying. He didn't want to waste any more words with Lu Ming. He had plenty of ways to make Lu Ming submit. This guy. Lu Ming inwardly sighed. This old fellow was indeed not easy to fool. It was already hard enough to buy him some time. All of you hurry up and leave. At this moment, a voice rang out, and then a rainbow-colored beam of light shot out from above, charging at the angel race god lord. Master. Chiu Yu and the others were overjoyed. Dream Void. The angel race god lord roared as he gripped the angel god sword and slashed with all his strength. Boom. The two attacks collided, unleashing a heaven-shaking explosion. The angel race god lord's body violently trembled as he retreated. It was clear that the angel race god lord was weaker than Dream Void. High above, Dream Void's figure flashed as he appeared. God Lord Dream Void cut a sorry figure, his body stained with blood. His aura was not at its peak, but he was injured. Master. Master, what happened to you? Chiu Yu and the others cried out in alarm, their faces filled with worry. I'm fine. Hurry up and leave. Leave him to me. With a wave of his hand, a gust of energy wrapped around Lu Ming and the rest, pushing them hundreds of millions of miles away. Then, he stepped out and charged toward the almighty master of the Angel Clan in an extremely domineering manner. Go. Lu Ming pulled Autumn Moon and flew into the distance. The other two disciples of God Lord Dream Void quickly followed. They knew very well that even if they stayed, they wouldn't be of any use to God Lord Dream Void. They might even drag him down. Their speed was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, they had flown far away. However, he could still vaguely see that there was another person on the battlefield. Heavenly Monarch Yesen. The powerful existence who had fought with God Lord Dream Void had arrived as well, but was stopped by God Lord Dream Void. Master. Autumn Moon and the other two had tears in their eyes. God Lord Dream Void was fighting 1 against 2, so they couldn't help but be worried. Don't worry. God Lord Dream Void is very strong, so he'll definitely be fine. The most important thing for all of you now is to complete the mission that God Lord Dream Void gave you. Right, where are you going next? Lu Ming comforted them before asking. Primordial Divine Lake. Master wants us to go there. He said that there will be experts from the Primordial Divine Lake coming to receive us. We shouldn't be too far from the entrance of the Primordial Divine Lake. Autumn Moon said. Primordial Divine Lake? Lu Ming was confused. He had never heard of this name before. Could it be related to the Primordial Divine Spirit? Then let's speed up, Lu Ming said. The group sped up, flying at full speed. But soon, they encountered another group of divine generals and divine soldiers. No, this area is surrounded by the experts of the Heavenly Palace. It'll be very difficult for us to break out. Lu Ming frowned. What should we do? Even though Master told me that we're not too far from the entrance of the Primordial Divine Lake, we don't know how far we are. Autumn Moon looked worried. They seemed to have been completely surrounded. The divine soldiers and divine generals they had encountered so far weren't very strong. The strongest one was only of the 4th Great Supreme God Layer. If they had encountered someone of the 5th Great Supreme God Layer or a Divine Lord, they would have been in trouble. I have an idea. I have a formation plate that can open a wormhole to the Dragon Clan's mother planet. We can go to the Dragon Clan's mother planet first and then go to the Primordial Divine Lake from there. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. He had thought of an idea. Back then Ao Qian had given him 36 formation plates. They could open a wormhole to the Dragon Clan's mother planet. Now they could use them to go to the Dragon Clan's mother planet first and then go to the Primordial Divine Lake from there. That way no one would know. It's not bad to have such a treasure. Autumn Moon and the others' eyes lit up. But it'll take some time to activate the formation plate. I hope we can make it in time, Lu Ming said. Then Lu Ming waved his hand and the 36 formation plates flew out and floated in the air. Forbidden energy was injected into the formation plates. Immediately, the 36 formation plates lit up and spun rapidly in the air. A mysterious fluctuation spread out. The formation plates were slowly opening a wormhole. I hope we can make it in time. Lu Ming, Autumn Moon and the others were looking forward to it. The formation plates shone brighter and brighter, and the fluctuation became more intense. Not long after, a vortex appeared in the middle of the formation plates. At first, the vortex was not deep, but slowly as the vortex spun rapidly, the vortex became deeper and deeper. It was connecting to the Dragon Clan's mother planet. Once it was connected, they would be able to go to the Dragon Clan's mother planet through the wormhole. However, at that moment, Lu Ming and the others' expressions changed. Behind them there was a fluctuation in the air. Then a group of people appeared. There were more than 30 people in that group. Lu Ming glanced at them and knew that they were 3 teams. 3 divine generals led a group of first-class celestial soldiers. Die. A loud roar was heard as one of the divine generals made his move. He held a golden sword in his hand and slashed out. A golden sword light tore through the void, traversing hundreds of millions of miles, and slashed at the 36 formation discs. With their eyesight they could see that Lu Ming and the others were opening a wormhole. His attack was aimed at the wormhole. I'll block it. Chiu flew out and turned into a black spear. It thrust forward and collided with the golden sword light. There was a loud explosion and the golden spear was blocked. However, Chiu's black spear also shook and was pushed back. A heavenly human of the 4th great god layer. Lu Ming's heart sank. The divine general who had attacked just now was also a heavenly human. Lu Ming had never seen him before. There were 18 teams that had set off together, but in fact, there were more than 18 teams that had participated in the hunt for Lord God Meng Su and the others. Lu Ming had never seen any of the 3 teams in front of him. Chapter 4194. This celestial tribe divine general was very powerful, even more so than the celestial tribe divine general killed by Chiu. Lu Ming reckoned that this heavenly human tribe divine general was a powerful supreme talent. He was able to fight someone who was 4 levels above him in the divine emperor realm. Otherwise, he would not be able to suppress Chiu with a cultivation level higher than him. You want to leave? Stay here and die. The celestial general was holding a golden sword. He was extremely fast. In just a few steps he was already close to Lu Ming and the others. The other 2 celestial generals also rushed over. Those 2 celestial generals had the strength of the 3rd great supreme god layer. They were very strong. Leave them to me. Young master, go and help Chiu, said Chiu Moon. A machete appeared in her hand. She was surrounded by 9 colored lights. With a clang the machete flew out. It turned into 2 rays of light and slashed towards the 2 celestial generals of the 3rd great supreme god layer. Lu Ming was holding the mysterious ice rod. Together with Chiu they attacked the celestial general. They had to stop those celestial generals and celestial generals. They had to buy time for the formation. Once the formation was activated, they would be able to enter the wormhole and go to the Dragon Clan's mother planet. Ao Qian was in charge of the Dragon Clan's mother planet. There was also the forbidden flying phoenix's soul. Even the Lord of Heaven of the Heavenly Palace wouldn't dare go there rashly. Traitors die, shouted the celestial general. His golden sword slashed towards Lu Ming and Chiu. Clang, clang. The 3 of them collided fiercely. Lu Ming's body shook violently. He felt an extremely strong strength rush towards him. He was pushed back and coughed up blood. At the same time Chiu was pushed back. That celestial general's fighting strength was astonishing. He had the strength of the 4th great supreme god layer. He was as strong as a candidate of the universe young geniuses list. He was stronger than Chiu. He was much stronger than Lu Ming. You still want to leave? Die. The divine general of the celestial race shouted coldly. Golden sword light slashed wildly at Lu Ming and Chiu. He could see that Lu Ming was weaker, so he used more power to slash at Lu Ming, wanting to kill Lu Ming in one fell swoop. Young master, let me help you. On the other side, Chiu Autumn Moon rushed toward Lu Ming and slashed at the heavenly human tribe divine general. As for the other 2 god generals and the first-class celestial soldiers, they were left to the other 2 disciples of God Lord Dream Void. Clang. Autumn Moon also exchanged a blow with the heavenly human tribe divine general. Her scimitar was also sent flying. Even Autumn Moon was no match for him. Seizing this opportunity, Lu Ming and Chiu attacked the heavenly human divine general again. Chiu used all his strength and turned into a long sword. It split into countless sword lights and slashed at the heavenly human tribe divine general. The sword lights filled the entire void. Lu Ming was enveloped in dazzling light. He was using all his strength to activate an ancient secret technique. The Great Shift Technique. Explode. Lu Ming bellowed. He cast the transference skill and directly teleported a huge star from afar. This planet was a resource planet. It was covered in flames and filled with scorching energy. It pressed down on the heavenly human tribe divine general. His cultivation was still not high enough. If it was high enough, he could move the stars in the sky, including the stars, to bombard the enemy. He couldn't do it now. Break. The heavenly human race's divine general shouted. The golden light was huge and boundless. It broke through the starry sky of the universe and slashed horizontally. It directly scattered the golden light emitted by Qiuqiu and also split the planet that Lu Ming had teleported over into two. Gale bead. When the planet was split in half, Lu Ming took out the gale bead again and used all his strength to guide a gust of wind towards the heavenly human tribe divine general. Autumn Moon also recovered and continued to attack. Qiuqiu retreated and attacked again. For a moment, Lu Ming and Autumn Moon worked together to block the enemy's attack. Although they were still at a disadvantage, they could still hold on for a while. Almost there, Lu Ming shouted in his mind. As long as they could hold on for a while longer, the wormhole to the dragon race's mother planet would be completely connected. However, reality didn't go as Lu Ming wished. Boom. In the distance, the void collapsed and someone else appeared. It was a fiend shadow wearing the armor of a divine general. It was an overlord of the fiend race and also a divine general. He didn't lead any heavenly soldiers but was alone. However, Lu Ming and the others pulled a long face. Because the chi of the fiend race's chi was even stronger than that of the heavenly human tribe divine general. He was definitely a cultivator who had surpassed the fourth great supreme god layer. He had probably reached the fifth great supreme god layer. One person was more threatening than a group of people. You came just in time. They were about to open the wormhole and escape. Destroy them, shouted the divine general of the heavenly human tribe. As long as he destroyed the wormhole that Lu Ming and the others had opened, Lu Ming and the others would be like turtles in a jar. Boom. The fiend race's divine general attacked. His body was huge and he rushed towards Lu Ming and the others. Before he even reached them, he threw a punch and a vast fist chi bombarded the 30 formation plates. Oh no! Lu Ming's expression changed. He wanted to stop him, but the divine general of the heavenly human tribe didn't let him. He attacked crazily and Lu Ming couldn't free himself. Similarly, Qiuqiu and Qiuqiu couldn't free themselves to stop him. Boom. The fiend race's fist chi bombarded the 30 formation plates. The 36 formation plates shook violently and their lights dimmed. The whirlpool in the middle of the 16 formation plates also quickly disappeared. The 36 formation plates shook and then flew towards Lu Ming. Lu Ming waved his hand and put them away. The 36 formation plates were fine. After all, they had been made by the spacetime spiritual mouse and given to him by Ao Qian. However, now that they had been interrupted, they couldn't go to the Dragon Clan's mother planet. Now, not only couldn't they go to the Dragon Clan's mother planet, but they also couldn't protect themselves. Boom. The divine general of the demon clan continued to dash toward Lu Ming, bringing with him a billowing demonic aura. Lu Ming, Qiuqiu Moon and the others all pulled a long face. It was already difficult for them to deal with the heavenly human tribe's divine general. Now that there was an even more terrifying fiend race's divine general, they were in a precarious situation. Leave this fiend to me. You guys have to find a way to escape. Bone's voice rang out. He flew out of Lu Ming's sea of consciousness, his body emitting a black light. Forbidden demon domain. Bone roared. His eye sockets were filled with raging fiend fire. Dense runes rushed out and formed a huge forbidden character that pressed down on the fiend race's divine general. Once the fiend race's divine general was enveloped by the forbidden character, his fiend chi rapidly weakened and his aura plummeted. With a puff, the fiend race's divine general spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. Chapter 4195. The bone demon cast the word restrict, and injured the divine general of the demon clan in one move. However, the bone demon turned into a beam of light and flew back to Lu Ming's sea of consciousness. Bone demon, you're so powerful. Can you finish off this heavenly human tribe warrior? Lu Ming asked the bone demon telepathically. No. I can deal with this devil because I'm the ancestor of the devil path. I can restrain devil path cultivators. I can't do the same to others. Moreover, I'm too weak. That move just now used up all the energy I've accumulated. Now, I'm so weak that I can't use any energy. The bone demon telepathically replied to Lu Ming. How can I make you stronger? Lu Ming asked as he cooperated with Qiuqiu and Qiuqiu to fight the heavenly human tribe divine general. Unless you can get me the bones of a divine lord from the devil race for me to refine. Or you can get me the bones of a devil lord from the devil race for me to refine. I can improve and recover quickly, the bone demon said. Lu Ming was speechless. Lu Ming was speechless. The bones of a divine lord or devil lord. Where could he get them? Charge. Let's charge out together. Lu Ming shouted to Qiuqiu Moon and the others. They couldn't delay any longer. They had to charge out as soon as possible. Otherwise it would be too dangerous. As time passed, more and more experts from the heavenly palace would come. I'll stop them. You guys charge. Qiuqiu roared and rushed to the front desperately, blocking most of the attacks from the heavenly human tribe divine general. Lu Ming and Qiuqiu Moon joined forces and charged in the same direction. This way Qiuqiu was under a lot of pressure. He blocked most of the attacks from the heavenly human tribe divine general, but he couldn't. He was hit in a few moves. Fortunately, Qiuqiu was a metallic life form. Especially Qiuqiu, it was even more special. Its defensive power and vitality were astonishing. Although it was hit, it only suffered light injuries and didn't have much of an effect. In the past, Qiuqiu had frequently transformed into a suit of armor to cover Lu Ming's body, helping him block attacks. It had been pierced through many times without any major problems, so one could see how powerful Qiuqiu's defenses and vitality were. Just like that, Qiuqiu blocked most of the attacks from the heavenly human tribe divine generals. Lu Ming, Autumn Moon, and the others worked together and charged in the same direction. Soon, Lu Ming and the others achieved results and had a chance of breaking out. Apart from the heavenly human tribe divine generals, no one else could stop Lu Ming and Autumn Moon. Kill? At this moment, the demon divine general ignored his injuries and charged at Lu Ming's group again. His two enormous claws swiped at Lu Ming and Autumn Moon. Lu Ming and Autumn Moon had no choice but to block. The mysterious ice rod and the scimitar slashed at the two claws at the same time. There was a violent explosion. The mysterious ice rod and the scimitar shook violently. Lu Ming and Autumn Moon trembled and moved back 2 steps. After all, the demon divine general had the strength of the 5th great supreme god layer. He was extremely strong. Even though he had been injured by the bone demon and couldn't completely suppress Lu Ming and Autumn Moon, he was still stronger than Lu Ming and Autumn Moon. Lu Ming and the others looked grave. If this continued, it would be very disadvantageous for them. If more people came from the heavenly palace, as soon as they had this thought, Lu Ming and the others' expressions changed drastically. Because not far from them, the starry sky rippled again and a group of celestial soldiers and divine generals appeared. This time there were a lot of people. More than 100 people stepped out from the void. Boom boom, they were all celestial soldiers and divine generals. There were more than 100 of them. They all released powerful chi which swept across the sky. Lu Ming and the others' hearts sank. Some of the divine generals' chi was too terrifying. They were definitely stronger than the celestial human divine general. They had the strength of the 5th great supreme god layer. There was even one who had the strength of the 5th great supreme god layer. His chi could topple mountains and overturn seas. So many strong cultivators had come, they couldn't escape. Haha, let's see how you can escape now. Die. The celestial human divine general laughed wildly. His face looked ferocious. Traitor, die! Shouted one of the divine generals. He immediately charged towards Lu Ming and the others. Die! Shouted the other celestial soldiers and divine generals. They all charged towards Lu Ming and the others. But in the next moment something strange happened. Not far from them the sky collapsed. A fist pierced through the sky. That fist was gigantic and covered with scales. It looked ferocious. Most importantly, that fist wasn't aimed at Lu Ming and the others. It was aimed at the celestial soldiers and divine generals. Who are you? How dare you attack the heavenly palace? You're courting death. Die! Shouted the celestial soldiers and divine generals. They all attacked the fist. Boom boom boom. A series of explosions rang out and the huge fist was blocked. It quickly shrank and retreated. However, the attacks of the celestial soldiers and divine generals were also destroyed. How strong! A fist had destroyed the attacks of hundreds of celestial soldiers and divine generals, including some extremely powerful divine generals. Not only were the celestial soldiers and divine generals confused, but Lu Ming and the others were also confused. They didn't know who had attacked them. Who would save them at this time? The celestial soldiers and divine generals looked grim. Who's there? Come out! Shouted a divine general. He stared at the direction where the fist had shrunk back. Crash! The void collapsed and 2 figures appeared in that place. They were 2 burly men. They looked to be in their 30s. They were more than 3 meters tall and had a violent aura. Lu Ming and Autumn Moon were confused because they didn't know the 2 burly men. However, Lu Ming felt a familiar aura from the 2 burly men. Primitive divine spirits. It was the aura of the primitive divine spirits. Lu Ming felt the aura of the primitive divine spirits from the 2 men. However, it wasn't pure. Lu Ming guessed that the 2 men had cultivated the primitive divine body. He could tell this from the fist just now. Who are you? How dare you attack the heavenly palace? Do you want to be killed? Shouted a divine general. How arrogant! We're attacking the people of the heavenly palace. Kill! shouted one of the burly men. He took a step forward and his body swelled rapidly. He turned into a gigantic being that was 1,000,000 feet tall. This being was covered with scales. It was clearly the form of a primitive divine spirit. Brr. With a loud roar, the burly man made his move. Both of his fists blasted out consecutively, causing the entire starry sky to tremble. His might was extremely shocking. At the same time, another burly man made his move as well. This burly man transformed into an incomparably gigantic lion. With a roar, a terrifying sound wave spread out. Wherever it passed, large patches of starry skies would crumble apart. Chapter 4196. When the two strong men attacked, the celestial soldiers and godly generals of the heavenly palace were astonished. The two strong men's cultivation levels were terrifying. They both had the strength of the sixth great supreme god layer. Some of the strongest godly generals immediately realized that the two strong men had the strength of the sixth great supreme god layer. On the heavenly palace's side, there was only one cultivator of the sixth great supreme god layer. Let's attack together and stop them. Their reinforcements will arrive soon. Then they'll die, shouted the cultivator of the sixth great supreme god layer. He activated his battle armor and used his full strength at the same time. The other celestial soldiers and godly generals did the same. They gathered together and activated their battle armor. Boom boom boom. Intense rumbling sounds rang out. Intense fluctuations erupted in the starry sky. Dazzling light illuminated everything for billions of miles. In the end, the dazzling lights broke apart. Those lights were the attacks of the celestial soldiers and godly generals. They couldn't compete with them. The remaining strength bombarded them. Some of the first-class celestial soldiers were unable to block the powerful attack with just the first-class celestial soldier armor. The light barrier formed by the first-class celestial soldiers directly collapsed. Boom boom boom. Many first-level celestial soldiers exploded. Not even their bones remained. The stronger godly general's battle armor was powerful enough. Even though they hadn't exploded, they still staggered backwards. Only the godly general of the sixth great supreme god layer was safe and sound. The heavenly palace only had one cultivator of the sixth great supreme god layer. Of course they couldn't block two of the great supreme god layer. In the great supreme god layer, having a large number of people was useless unless they had a great deployment spell. However, those godly generals and first-level celestial soldiers were scattered all over the place. They had never worked together before. How could they use a great deployment spell? How audacious! How dare you kill our heavenly palace's celestial soldiers? You're disgraceful, shouted a heavenly human cultivator furiously. Heavenly palace? Hee hee, today we're going to kill the heavenly palace's people. Of the two burly men, a green-skinned man sneered. He transformed into 1,000,000 feet tall and stepped into the void. Every step he took caused the void to tremble violently. Boom! He threw another punch. His fist was covered in scales. It pierced through the starry sky and contained destructive strength. It swept towards the heavenly palace's celestial soldiers and godly generals. At the same time, the other lion pounced and clawed at them. Horrible shrieks spread in the air. Celestial soldiers were killed again. Even the godly generals coughed blood. But they couldn't block godly generals and generals and generals and godly generals and generals and generals and godly generals and godly generals and generals. If this continued, the divine generals would also die. Damn it! Hurry up and spread the news. Call for help, shouted godly generals, and godly generals as soldiers and generals as generals and generals as godly generals. You can't stop it. All of you will die. God general, godly generals. Really? Godly generals. Godly generals, heavenly palace generals as generals. Heavenly human god, heaven's god palace, heavenly palace, generals. It was a member of the heavenly human clan. He was tall and slender with golden hair. He stood there with his hands clasped behind his back. He was just standing there casually, but he had the aura of a conqueror. Everyone stiffened under the pressure of that aura. They couldn't help but stop, including Lu Ming, Chiu Autumn Moon, Chiu, and the godly generals of the heavenly human clan. Because that member of the heavenly human clan was a godly lord. Indeed, his aura was definitely that of a godly lord. Another godly lord had appeared in the heavenly palace. Lord of heaven, shouted a godly general of the heavenly palace. He was extremely excited. Lord of heaven is here. You traitors are going to die. Haha, you dare attack the heavenly palace? You all deserve to die. Some heavenly soldiers and godly generals laughed. Lu Ming, Chiu Autumn Moon and the others' hearts sank. However, the expressions on the two burly men's faces were incomparably calm. It was as if they weren't facing a godly lord or a lord of heaven, but an ordinary person. Finally, a lord of heaven has appeared. Not bad. Not bad. The two burly men smiled. They looked very relaxed. This made the Lord of Heaven frown. His eyes were like lightning as he scanned the surroundings. Suddenly, the Lord of Heaven's eyes lit up like two burning suns. Hide in the dark. Come out. The Lord of Heaven said coldly. Then he reached out and grabbed at the void. Boom. There was a huge explosion in the void. Everything was completely annihilated and turned into nothingness. No, there was still something that wasn't annihilated. It was a figure. It was an incomparably huge figure standing in the void. Just his head alone was larger than a star. As he stood in the starry sky, it seemed as though the stars in the sky were revolving around him. Primordial God Spirit. Lu Ming was dumbfounded. He stood there dumbfounded, his eyes widening. It was a primordial God Spirit. There was no mistake. It was a real primordial God Spirit, a pure primordial God Spirit. He didn't cultivate the primordial God body. A living primordial God Spirit. It was not just Lu Ming. Chiu Yu, as well as the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, widened their eyes. They stood rooted to the ground in shock. The primordial God Spirit wasn't a stranger to everyone in the primitive universe. It was like thunder in their ears. Most people cultivated God power. The source of God power was the power controlled by the primordial God Spirit. However, almost no one had seen the primordial God Spirit. The primordial God Spirit was just a legend. It had disappeared in the primitive universe for a long time. The incipient God era had become history. Some people said that the primordial God Spirit was extinct. There was no primordial God Spirit in the primitive universe. But now, a living primordial God Spirit had suddenly appeared. How could they not be shocked? You're from the primordial God Lake? The Lord of Heaven's pupils shrank as he spoke coldly. Lu Ming, Chiu Autumn Moon and the others were shaken. Wasn't the place they wanted to go to the primordial God Lake? Did the experts from the primordial God Lake come to support them? They were overjoyed. That's right. We've waited for a Lord of Heaven. Today I'm going to take your head back, the primordial God Spirit spoke. Before he could finish, he took action. He extended a giant hand, grabbing at the Lord of Heaven. The primordial God Spirit's hand shattered a large area of the starry sky. Wherever it passed, everything was destroyed. General of the defeated army, since you're here, I'll send you to reunite with your friends. The Lord of Heaven of the heavenly palace roared. He turned into a jet of brilliant light, shooting toward the primordial God Spirit. A giant sword light shot out, slashing at the primordial God Spirit. Boom. The earth-shattering collision exploded. The two peerless characters were fighting fiercely. The void had completely turned into primal chaos. Lu Ming and the others retreated crazily. They tried their best to keep a distance as they were afraid of getting involved. Chapter 4197. The starry sky was shaking, the stars were exploding, and the stars were extinguished one after another. The battle between the primordial God and the Lord of Heaven was too terrifying. That area was completely turned into chaos. Lu Ming and the others couldn't see what was happening inside. They could only vaguely see two figures fighting fiercely, but they couldn't tell who won and who lost, who had the upper hand and who was suppressed. After a while, a shrill scream was heard, and then a figure flew out of the chaos. It was the Lord of Heaven in the heavenly palace. However, this heavenly monarch was in a very sorry state. His lower body was gone and had disappeared. Half of his head was gone and his body was in tatters. The invincible demeanor he had before had long disappeared without a trace. There was fear in his remaining eye. He didn't dare to stay any longer, and he used all his strength to escape. In a flash, he disappeared from where he was. No one knew where he had escaped to. The heavenly soldiers and divine generals were dumbfounded. Was the Lord of Heaven defeated? Whoosh. At this moment, the primal chaos churned, and a humongous figure appeared. It was the primordial God. The primordial God was in a much better state than the Lord of Heaven. There were only a few more wounds on his body, but he didn't seem to be in a serious condition. Apparently, the primordial God had won. Run. At that moment, a divine general finally came to his senses and turned around to run. The Lord of Heaven had escaped after being defeated. Wouldn't it be suicide for them to face a living primordial God? All the heavenly soldiers and divine generals were horrified. Even the divine general of the heavenly human race who attacked Lu Ming and the others in the morning was the same. His eyes were full of fear and he fled frantically. He couldn't care less about Lu Ming and the others. Umph. The primordial god snorted as if because the Lord of Heaven had escaped. He was very unhappy. As he snorted, an invisible ripple spread out, and the fleeing celestial soldiers and divine generals suddenly stopped. Their bodies stiffened in the air, their eyes filled with fear. No. You won't have a good ending for offending my heavenly human tribe. Ah! Then blood-curdling screams were heard. One by one, the celestial soldiers and divine generals were reduced to ashes. Yes, they were directly turned into ashes. Even their armor and divine weapons were turned into ashes. They couldn't resist at all. However, Lu Ming, Qiu Qiuyu and the others were completely fine. It was as if a gust of wind had brushed past them. What terrifying strength! Lu Ming and the others sucked in a breath of cold air. With a cold snort, those celestial soldiers and divine generals were reduced to ashes before they could even make a move. Some of those godly generals had the strength of the sixth great supreme god layer, and they were wearing powerful battle armor, but it was useless. The gap between them was just too big. From this, one could see just how powerful a divine master was. There was an insurmountable gap between a great supreme god and a divine master. Moreover, the primitive divine spirit in front of them was extremely powerful, even among divine masters. I've read about the primitive divine spirit before. It said that when the primitive divine spirit was born, even the weakest primitive divine spirit had the cultivation of the divine emperor realm. With a little bit of cultivation they could easily reach the great supreme god realm. Some talented primitive divine spirits could easily reach the divine master realm if they worked hard. This primitive divine spirit is probably one of the most talented among the primitive divine spirits. This information appeared in Lu Ming's mind. Killing those celestial soldiers and divine generals seemed like a trivial matter to the primitive divine spirit. Then he looked at Qiu Qiuyu and asked, "Your divine Lord Dream Void's disciples?" "That's right, Senior. My teacher is being surrounded by the experts of the Heavenly Palace. Senior, please help us," Qiu Qiuyu hurriedly said. The other two disciples of Divine Lord Dream Void also hurriedly asked for help. "Don't worry about Divine Lord Dream Void. We'll send someone else to rescue him. We can't stay here for long. I'll take you away first." With that, the primitive divine spirit waved his hand and a powerful force swept toward Lu Ming's group. This force was ancient and filled with the aura of time, as if it had come from the ancient universe. What rich divine power! Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. He also felt that this force was a kind of divine power, but it was incomparably ancient and powerful and incomparably pure. This is the source of divine power. When a divine power is cultivated to the highest level and awakens all the origin divine power factors, it's probably in this state. Lu Ming's mind was filled with all kinds of thoughts. While Lu Ming was thinking about all sorts of things, the force had already engulfed them. In a flash, they disappeared from their original spot. The primitive divine spirit carried them at an incredible speed, breaking through the void and traversing countless galaxies and star fields in an instant. It was like riding a wormhole. In less than 10 minutes, the surrounding environment changed and Lu Ming's group appeared on a vast land. Lu Ming looked around and found that they were in a mountain range. This mountain range was majestic and mighty, vast and filled with an ancient aura. This aura was as if this land had been passed down from the beginning of the universe. This aura is very similar to the aura of the primitive divine spirit world. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. He had been to the primitive divine spirit world before. There were 13 famed mountains there, and each famed mountain had given birth to a primitive divine spirit. Lu Ming found that the aura here was very similar to that world. However, it was also different. The ancient aura of this world was even richer and more intense. "This is the primitive divine lake." A deep voice sounded. It was the primitive divine spirit. At this moment, his body had shrunk and turned into a burly man filled with a domineering aura. "Junior Autumn Moon greets Senior." "Junior Lu Ming greets Senior." "Junior?" Lu Ming and the others hurriedly cupped their fists and bowed. This was a genuine primitive divine spirit. Primitive divine spirits were born at the beginning of the universe. In other words, this being in front of them had been alive since the beginning of the universe. How long had that been? Could a primitive divine spirit live for so long? It was almost coexisting with the universe. Facing such a being, they did not dare to be careless. "You're welcome. Follow me into the city. Your master should be here soon," the primitive divine spirit said, then stepped into the air and headed in a direction. Lu Ming and the others followed and found that there was a huge city in front of the mountain range. It lay between the universe and was even more majestic than the mountain range. Lu Ming was curious. He did not know what kind of world the primitive divine lake was. It even had a real primitive divine spirit. Chapter 4198. Soon the primordial divine spirit led them into the city. The huge city was very big and there were many buildings inside. One could see that there were many people here and it was a sea of people. Lu Ming and the rest flew across the sky in a flash. They did not alarm the people below. In the center of the city was a huge mountain that pierced the sky. It stood out like a crane in a flock of chickens. Some buildings could be seen on the peak of the mountain. Lu Ming and the others landed on a flat piece of land on the mountain peak. It was very quiet and there was no one here. This is my cultivation ground. From now on all of you will stay here, surely. Wait a moment, bring them in. The primordial divine spirit ordered one of the muscular men. Yes, Lord incipient God. One of the muscular men bowed and accepted the order. They're here. At this moment the primordial divine spirit looked at the void. Whoosh. The void split open and 3 figures appeared. One of them was God Lord Dream Void. However, she was in a sorry state and her aura was weak. Her clothes were stained with blood. Even with God Lord Dream Void's strength, she was in such a sorry state. One could imagine how intense the battle had been. Beside God Lord Dream Void was a middle-aged man and woman. His appearance looked very ordinary, but the aura on his body was incomparably terrifying. Although they did not deliberately release their auras, Lu Ming was still shocked. It was like an invincible existence was standing in the void. God Lords. These two were definitely God Lords. Lu Ming's heart thumped. He had a new understanding of the primordial divine lake's strength. So far there were 3 God Lords. With such strength, even in the primitive universe he would be ranked very high. Generally speaking, only the top 100 races of the primitive universe's 10,000 races list had God Lords. Moreover, the lower-ranked races usually only had 1 God Lord. Of course there were exceptions. For example, some weaker races would occasionally have a God Lord, but such situations were rare. The primordial divine lake already had 3. The strength of the other 2 was unknown because he had not seen them fight. However, the one who brought Lu Ming and the others back was definitely terrifying. He had almost left a Lord of Heaven behind. God Lord Dream Void and the other 2 appeared on the mountain peak in a flash. Master, are you okay? Chiu Yu and the other 2 quickly went over and asked in concern. I'm fine. God Lord Dream Void smiled. She was relieved to see that the 3 of them were fine. God Lord Dream Void glanced at Lu Ming but did not pay him much attention. She thought that Lu Ming was from the primordial divine lake. Dream Void, you really are the Lord's heart? There was a look of anticipation in the eyes of the primitive god who had brought Lu Ming and the rest here. The other 2 divine lord experts did the same. Lu Ming was curious. What kind of legendary object was the Lord of God's heart that could make the Lord of Gods look forward to it? That's right, I've brought it out. God Lord Dream Void said. She then looked at the 3 of them. Autumn Moon nodded. With a wave of her hand, a metal box flew out. This metal box was covered in runes that sealed it. You guys step back. God Lord Dream Void said. She was talking to the 3 of them. She was talking to the 3 of them. Lu Ming, Autumn Moon and the others all stepped back. The primordial divine spirit waved his hand and a light screen appeared in front of Lu Ming and the others, protecting them. God Lord Dream Void began to break the seal on the metal box. Soon the seal was broken and the metal box opened. Dong dong dong. As soon as the metal box was opened, Lu Ming heard a series of sounds that sounded like war drums. Every thud caused the void to tremble. Lu Ming felt that his heart was trembling as well, as if it was about to explode. At the same time, a tide-like aura rushed out of the metal box. It was incomparably terrifying. In the next instant, a dazzling blood-red light shot out of the metal box. The divine lords quickly took action and sealed the void so that the blood-red light could not shine out. Otherwise the entire city would be alarmed. Then a ball of red light flew out of the metal box. A heart. Is that the main god's heart? Lu Ming opened his eyes wide. He realized that it was a heart that had flown out of the metal box. A heart the size of a human head was still beating as if it was alive. One could see that there were dense runes covering the heart, which should be sealing the heart. However, even with the seal, there was still a terrifying and boundless aura emanating from it. Lu Ming felt his body tremble. He couldn't help but step back. His body felt like it was about to explode. Facing this heart was like facing an incomparably terrifying and tyrannical existence. Chiu Yu and the others weren't any better. They couldn't help but step back. Even the 2 strong men of the 6th Great Supreme God layer were the same. They were still under the protection of the original godly spirit's energy. Otherwise they wouldn't have been able to resist it. What a terrifying chi. Why do I feel that this chi is even stronger than the Divine Lord's and the Lord of Heaven's chi? It's much stronger. A thought emerged in Lu Ming's mind. Then he was stunned by the thought. Could it be that this was a heart that was even stronger than the Divine Lord's? But didn't the original universe say that the Divine Lords were the strongest? Could there be someone stronger than the Divine Lords? The main God's heart? A main God? What is a main God? Is it a kind of original godly spirit? Various thoughts appeared in Lu Ming's mind. The chi emitted by the heart was very similar to the original godly spirit's chi. However, it was very ancient and terrifying. It's really the main God's heart. That's great. The original godly spirit was pleasantly surprised and excited. Not bad. With the main God's heart, the original godly lake can cultivate with it. Our strength will definitely increase and many experts will be born. The other Divine Lord middle-aged woman was also pleasantly surprised. Mengsu, we really have to thank you this time. After a while, the Divine Lords calmed down and one of them thanked God Mengsu solemnly. You're welcome. The main God's heart originally belonged to the original godly spirit. It was just sealed in the heavenly palace. Moreover, the heavenly palace has done a lot of evil. They're our common enemy. I brought it out to increase your strength. In the future, you'll have a better chance of dealing with the heavenly palace. God Mengsu said. No matter what, we still have to thank you. Mengsu, you're badly injured. You should hurry up and heal. The Divine Lord middle-aged woman said. God Mengsu nodded. Then he told the three Divine Lords to stay here for the time being. After that, the God Lords and God Lord Dream Void left the place. Only Lu Ming, Chiu Moon, and the two Divine Lords of the sixth great Supreme God layer were left on the mountain peak. Chapter 4199. Everyone come with us. We'll take you to where you'll be staying. A brawny man smiled. Thank you. Lu Ming smiled. The two brawny men led the way while Lu Ming and the others followed behind. Along the way, Lu Ming and the others asked about the Primordial Divine Lake. The Primordial Divine Lake is a huge world. Many primordial divine spirits were born in this world countless years ago. Therefore, the people in the Primordial Divine Lake are either the descendants of the primordial divine spirits or those who cultivate the primordial divine body, a brawny man explained. His name was Shirley. Why does this world look so similar to the primordial divine spirit world? Lu Ming's heart stirred. He was very curious. Can you see a lake over there? Shirley pointed to the west. Lu Ming and the group looked into the distance. They were on the top of the mountain and their position was very high. After taking a closer look, they could indeed see that there seemed to be a lake in the west of the city. It was just that this lake was so huge that one couldn't see the end of it. It was like an ocean. It could be seen that the enormous city was built on the edge of a lake. That lake is the Primordial Divine Lake. There's a city in each of the four directions of the Primordial Divine Lake. We're in one of them. This mountain peak is the core of this city. Some of the most powerful divine masters live at the peak of this mountain. Therefore, ordinary people are unable to come up to this mountain peak. It is very quiet here and no one will disturb you, Shirley explained. Lu Ming was even more shocked after hearing Shirley's explanation. If there were 4 such cities, then how many Divine Master Realm experts were there in those cities? According to Shirley's words, some of the most powerful Divine Masters. There must be many Divine Masters in the Primordial Divine Lake. Then Lu Ming sensed the environment carefully. The Divine Chi here was unimaginably rich. It was even richer than when the Dragon Clan's mother planet was revived. Moreover, the place was filled with an ancient aura. It was the aura of the Primordial Divine Spirits. Those who cultivated divine power would definitely improve quickly if they cultivated here. For example, if his past self cultivated here, he would definitely be blessed by nature. Should I let my past self cultivate here? Lu Ming pondered. The 36 array discs in his hand could open a wormhole to the Dragon Clan's mother planet. Not only could it allow outsiders to enter the mother planet of the dragon race, it could also allow the mother planet of the dragon race to exit. After he opened the wormhole and connected the dragon race's mother planet to this place, he could let his past self come here. Let's wait. We're new here. Let's talk about it after we settle down. Lu Ming thought. Soon they arrived in front of a courtyard. You can stay here for now. If there's anything you can send us a message. This is my contact number. Shirley took out a voice transmission jade talisman and exchanged some contact information with Lu Ming and the others. The people of the primitive divine lake were enemies with the heavenly palace. Naturally, they would not use the dreamy heavenly jade. Lu Ming and the others stayed here for the night while Shirley and the other two left. Dream Sky City in a huge hall. Primordial Divine Lake, Dream Void. A cold voice came from the hall, full of anger. At the same time, it was accompanied by a terrifying aura, causing the people around the hall to tremble. Because this was the aura of the Lord of Heaven. The Lord of Heaven was furious. And that traitor heavenly soldier, have you found out? What's his background? In the hall, a Lord of Heaven said coldly. Yes, that heavenly soldier is called Mu Yun. He's a very powerful sky pride. Even Yi Yu was defeated by him. Someone below answered. To be able to defeat Yi Yu, that's rare. But no matter how strong he is, it's useless if he can't be used by me. Where did he come from? A Lord of Heaven asked. From the Fengdu Sword sect of the Iron Sea Star Region Group. Someone below answered. Iron Sea Star Region Group? Fengdu Sword sect? Pass down my order. From today onwards, Fengdu Sword sect will cease to exist. A Lord of Heaven gave the order. Yes. Someone immediately accepted the order. A cold light flashed in his eyes. If there was no need to exist, then it would naturally be destroyed. Lord of Heaven, I've also found out that Mu Yin seems to be very close to a sky pride of the World Turtle Clan and the Elf Princess. How should we deal with him? Someone else asked. Very close? What do you mean? A Lord of Heaven frowned and asked. It's because they were very close to each other when they were participating in the Heavenly Soldier assessment and often acted together. In addition, that Mu Yun seems to be the fiancé of the Elf Princess Ling Yue. Someone answered. He, the Elf Clan? A Lord of Heaven sneered, his eyes cold. It's not the right time to touch the Elf Clan or the World Turtle Clan. Send someone to monitor them first. If there's any movement, report it immediately. A Lord of Heaven said. Yes. Someone accepted the order. Everyone, Lord of Heaven, how should we deal with that Mu Yun? Someone else asked. He entered the Heavenly Palace, became a Heavenly Soldier and put on the Heavenly Soldier armor. Where else can he escape to? Immediately call a Divine Master over and activate the restrictive power of the Heavenly Soldier armor to kill Mu Yun. A Lord of Heaven ordered. Yes, Lord of Heaven. Someone accepted the order and left. Not long after, a white-haired old man entered the hall. This was a Divine Master. The Divine Masters of the Heavenly Palace were responsible for refining all kinds of divine armors, battle suits, and inscribing all kinds of formation and restrictive power. They were also able to activate the restrictive power inside the armor. Everyone, Lord of Heaven, the traitor who betrayed the Heavenly Palace must die. This subordinate will activate the restrictive power and kill that traitor. The white-haired Divine Master bowed and immediately began to make his move. As he performed a series of hand seals, strange runes began to appear in his hands and swirl around like little snakes, as if they had come to life. He was activating the restrictive power inside the Heavenly Soldier armor. However, after a while, the white-haired Divine Master's face became more and more solemn and ugly. After a while, his expression was no longer ugly. Instead, it was gloomy. In the hall, the gazes of the Lord of Heaven also darkened. After a while, the white-haired Divine Master stopped and let out a long breath. His eyes were filled with uncertainty. What's going on? A Lord of Heaven asked. It's useless. The restrictive power has lost its effect. I can't sense it at all, the white-haired Divine Master said. Get to the point. One of the Heaven Monarchs frowned and said coldly. In other words, the restrictive power in Mu Yun's body has been refined and destroyed. The white-haired Divine Master said with a grave expression. What? How is that possible? A few exclamations sounded. In the hall, a total of 5 Lord of Heaven stood up together, and a terrifying aura emanated from their bodies. Many people below didn't even dare to breathe loudly. They were under great pressure. Chapter 4200. The faces of the 5 heavenly lords were dark and gloomy. Isn't the prohibition power in the Heavenly Soldier armor indestructible? One of the Lord of Heaven asked coldly. The white-haired priest broke out in a cold sweat under the pressure of the 5 Lord of Heaven. That's right. The power of the seals in the celestial battle armor can be distributed to every cell. Even a divine lord would find it difficult to destroy them. There's only one way to destroy the power of the seals on the celestial battle armor. The white-haired priest paused, his eyes filled with shock. Forbidden body. One of the Lord of Heaven said coldly, his eyes filled with murderous intent. The other 4 Lord of Heaven did the same, their eyes filled with murderous intent. They knew that only a priest from the Heavenly Palace could destroy the prohibition power in the Heavenly Soldier armor. Otherwise, there was only one other possibility, a forbidden body. They knew about the forbidden body and the mysteries of the forbidden power. The forbidden power could be distributed to every cell, so it was not difficult to destroy the prohibition power in the Heavenly Soldier armor. I didn't expect Mu Yun to have a forbidden body. No wonder he's so strong and can defeat Yi Yu. Another Lord of Heaven said coldly. There's Lu Ming in the Dragon Clan's mother planet, and there's Mu Yun outside. 2 forbidden bodies, another Lord of Heaven said with a gloomy face. 2 people with the forbidden physique had appeared in the same era. This was not a good sign. The forbidden body was a great enemy of the heavenly palace, and they had to be taken down. We can't let go of the forbidden body. We have to take it down. Moreover, the Lord God's heart is at the primordial divine lake, which will increase their strength. We can't let them, primordial divine lake. How dare you? Don't think we don't know where you are. It seems like the heavenly palace hasn't made a move for many years, and these people are getting bolder. Spread the news and gather a portion of the divine masters. We can't let this matter rest. The Lord of Heaven spoke with icy murderous intents. Lu Ming was completely unaware that the fact that he possessed a taboo physique had been exposed. After resting for a day, he had recovered to his peak condition. This primitive divine lake world is very similar to the primitive divine spirit world. The people here are either the descendants of the primitive divine spirit or those who cultivate the primitive divine body. This is interesting. Why don't we go and take a look? The more Lu Ming thought about it, the more curious he became. Immediately, he pulled Autumn Moon and Autumn Moon's 2 senior sisters down the mountain, intending to walk around and broaden his horizons. Autumn Moon and Lu Ming had not seen each other for many years. Naturally, he did not have any objections. As for the 2 senior sisters from Autumn Moon, they were very curious about this place and naturally agreed. The 4 of them walked down the mountain. Not long after, they arrived at the foot of the mountain. Then they flew into the distance. In front of them they could see many tall buildings and a large crowd. Boom! Suddenly, Lu Ming and the rest discovered that there was a violent roar in the sky in front of them. Streaks of terrifying force swept in all directions. In the sky, 2 huge figures appeared and were fighting fiercely. The 2 figures were extremely huge. They were more than 10 million feet tall. The 2 huge figures were fighting fiercely in the sky. Are they primitive divine spirits? One of Autumn Moon's senior sisters exclaimed. No, their auras aren't rich and pure enough. They aren't real primitive divine spirits. They should be the descendants of the primitive divine spirits, Lu Ming explained. His past self cultivated the universe myriad Dao technique. He cultivated various divine powers and primitive divine power. He even cultivated the primitive divine blood. Hence, he knew the primitive divine spirits very well. The 2 people fighting before him were not pure primitive divine spirits. They should be the descendants of the primitive divine spirits or experts who cultivated the primitive divine body. These 2 beings were very powerful. They had definitely reached the high level of the divine emperor. However, there was no killing intent between them. They were probably just sparring. Sure enough, the 2 sides fought for a while, but there was no clear victor. Then they turned into 2 burly men, laughed and flew to a place and disappeared. The other people around them were also not surprised by this. What a strange place. Autumn Moon mumbled. It is indeed strange. Let's go and take a look. Lu Ming and the others sped up. However, they were stopped when they approached a bustling area. 5 young men stood in front of Lu Ming and the rest. The 5 young men looked to be in their 20s. They scanned Lu Ming and the others. When their eyes fell on Autumn Moon and the others, they were stunned. Who are you? I haven't seen you before. A young man with red hair was the first to speak. We just came to the primitive divine lake not long ago. My master is a friend of the primitive divine lake. One of Autumn Moon's senior sisters replied. Oh, so you are outsiders. You just came to the primitive divine lake. The 5 young men looked at each other and smiled. Ladies, you have just arrived at the primordial divine emperor. I believe you are not familiar with the environment here. Why don't you let us bring you around for a tour? The young man with red hair said with a smile. His eyes kept wandering between Autumn Moon and Autumn Moon's senior sisters. Qiu Yu and Qiu Yu's 2 senior sisters were undoubtedly rare women in the world. They were peerlessly beautiful and peerlessly beautiful. This was especially true for Qiu Yu. She had a unique temperament that could involuntarily attract the attention of others. Lu Ming frowned. He knew what these young men were up to. How could he let them have designs on Autumn Moon? No need. We can walk around on our own. Lu Ming said and refused. The 5 young men's faces darkened immediately. They looked at Lu Ming coldly. Did I talk to you? I'm talking to the 3 ladies. What does it have to do with you? The red-haired young man said coldly. What he says is what I say. Autumn Moon grabbed Lu Ming's hand and said. Autumn Moon's words and Autumn Moon's actions were a slap in the face. The young men's faces darkened. Kid, why don't you look at yourself in the mirror? Who do you think you are to walk with the three ladies? That's right. Besides, you're too greedy. You better give up a few of them if you want to eat all three of them. That's right. If you know what's good for you, you'd better get out of here. Otherwise, I don't know what will happen to you. The young men said one after another. Their threats were self-evident. However, did Lu Ming grow up in fear? Obviously not. What if I don't leave? Lu Ming said calmly. Brat, don't be too thick-skinned. I'll tell you bluntly, the three ladies are all peerless beauties. How can you be worthy of them? If you walk together with them, you'll be sullying them. Do you understand? The red-haired young man shouted. If I'm not worthy, do you think you're worthy? Lu Ming sneered. Chapter 4201. Of course we're good enough for her, shouted the red-haired young man. You. Forgive me for being blunt, but you're too weak. You can't even compare to my finger, said Lu Ming, shaking his head disdainfully. You. The five young men's faces turned red, and they glared at Lu Ming furiously. Boom. One of the young men exuded a powerful aura, forming a powerful pressure that pressed down on Lu Ming. 8th Godly Emperor Layer. The young man had the cultivation of the 8th Divine Emperor realm. He took a step forward and the air shook. Then he threw a punch at Lu Ming. I'll show you who's good enough for her and who's not. His voice and his fist arrived in front of Lu Ming at the same time, aiming at Lu Ming's face. Being able to break through to the 8th Godly Emperor Layer wasn't bad at all, so he was very arrogant. However, in front of Lu Ming, such a cultivation level was really not enough. Lu Ming waved his hand and slapped him as if he was swatting a fly. Instantly, there was a strong gust of wind and a terrifying force swept out. With a cracking sound, the other party's fist bones shattered. He screamed and his body flew backward, crashing onto the ground below and vomiting a mouthful of blood. You're so weak and you want to talk about being good enough for me? Said Lu Ming indifferently. He didn't try to hide his mockery. Normally, Lu Ming wouldn't make fun of other people, but when it came to his women, it was a different matter. He and Qiu Moon had been separated for so many years, they had just met again, and that young man was trying to steal her away. How could he be happy? The other four young men's expressions changed drastically. They hadn't thought that Lu Ming would be so strong. That young man couldn't withstand a single attack from Lu Ming. They knew very well that although the young man was only at the 8th Divine Emperor realm, he could fight someone who was 3 levels higher than him. He was considered a top genius. Not many people in the Divine Emperor realm could be his match. However, he had been sent flying by Lu Ming's slap. Lu Ming's battle prowess was somewhat unexpected. So you've already broken through to the 9th Godly Emperor Layer, no wonder you're so arrogant. But let me tell you, even if you're at the same cultivation level, there's a huge difference in fighting abilities. Let me show you what real fighting abilities are. The red-haired young man's eyes were filled with a cold light. He stepped out and his powerful aura exploded. 9th Godly Emperor Layer. The red-haired young man had the strength of the 9th Godly Emperor Layer. A layer of red heat spread out from his body. It was extremely hot, and it burned the void within a radius of dozens of meters into pitch black. That was because the space had been burned. It was pitch black and there was nothing there. Kill? The red-haired youth shouted as he punched out at Lu Ming. The instant he punched out, his fist rapidly grew in size. A layer of fiery red hair appeared on his fist, and there were also fiery red flames burning on the hair. A fist the size of a small mountain pressed down. Before it even arrived, the scorching flames seemed like they were going to burn Lu Ming. However, Lu Ming's expression didn't change at all. He was calm and indifferent. Lu Ming didn't fear anyone at the same cultivation level as him. He had already reached the limit of the Godly Emperor Layer. 9 layers was the limit and it was difficult to surpass it. Unless someone could surpass 10 layers, but according to Guillemot that was impossible. Boom. Lu Ming casually slapped the fiery red fist. There was a loud bang and the flames were extinguished. The red-haired young man retreated a few thousand meters before he could stabilize himself. You seem to be in a sorry state. That's all you've got? Said Lu Ming indifferently. You want to die? Shouted the red-haired young man furiously. He had wanted to show off in front of the beautiful women of the Autumn Moon Festival, but in the end, he had been humiliated. Brr. He let out a roar and then his body expanded rapidly, becoming 1,000,000 meters tall. He stood tall and his head reached into the sky. He was a giant ape. The red-haired young man turned into a 1,000,000 zhang tall giant ape. His body was covered in red flames and his aura was wild. Primitive divine body, no, it's primitive divine blood. Lu Ming's heart stirred. He could tell that the red-haired young man had refined more than 1 drop of primitive divine blood. There's a big battle over there. It seems to be Yuan Jin. It's him. I heard that he has refined 88 drops of primitive divine blood. Let's go and take a look. Let's go. The red-haired young man became 1,000,000 zhang tall, and the surrounding area was alarmed. Many people flew over. Boom. A long red rod appeared in the red-haired young man's hand, and he smashed it at Lu Ming. The fiery red staff was as huge as a mountain. He can fight someone who is 4 levels above him. Lu Ming saw the red-haired young man's attack, and he had a rough idea of his combat strength. He was calculating how much strength he should use. Then Lu Ming threw out a punch. Lu Ming used the great fragmentation skill in this punch. Lu Ming's tiny fist and the red long rod that was as big as a mountain swelled together. Crack. There was no loud explosion. When the two attacks collided, the red rod was covered with cracks, and then it exploded with a bang. Then the fist force continued to hit the red-haired young man's body. The red-haired young man screamed. His chest was penetrated by the fist force, and there was a hole in his chest. The red-haired young man's body was like a deflated balloon, and he quickly shrank back to his original size. He was pushed back dozens of miles and he spat out blood. What? Yuan Jin was defeated in one move. The surrounding people could not help but widen their eyes, their faces filled with disbelief. Yuan Jin was considered a rather famous genius at the Primordial Divine Lake. Many people knew him and they even knew of his combat strength. Among the divine emperors, only a few people could suppress Yuan Jin. No one dared to say that they could defeat him. However, Yuan Jin was defeated in one move. And it was a stranger. Who is he? Is he a new genius at the primitive sacred lake? But why don't I feel the aura of a primitive divine spirit from him? He is really strong. He can defeat Yuan Jin in one move. Is he able to fight someone who is 4.5 levels above him, or even 5 levels above him? The people around started to talk about it. Now, who is qualified? Lu Ming looked at Yuan Jin indifferently. Yuan Jin was so angry that he spat out another mouthful of blood. The other 3 young men were pale, and they did not dare to say a word. They were not as strong as Yuan Jin, and they would be defeated if they went up. Wait and see. Someone will take care of you. The red-haired young man pointed at Lu Ming and shouted. Oh, you want to call for help? Well, I will wait here. Call for help. As long as it is a fight between people of the same level, I will accept it. Lu Ming said, and his voice spread in all directions. Chapter 4202. Yuan Jin wanted to call for help, so Lu Ming accepted his challenge. Of course, he had another condition: they had to fight against cultivators of the same level. Lu Ming knew that the gap between godly emperors and great supreme gods was huge. Even though he was strong, he wasn't invincible. If his opponents had some great supreme gods, he wouldn't be able to defeat them. If they were godly emperors, he would be invincible. However, Lu Ming's words still sounded very arrogant in the ears of others. How arrogant? He's going to fight against godly emperors. Does he really think he's invincible? Primitive Divine Lake has many monstrous geniuses. Yuan Jin's cousin Yuan Zhan is even more terrifying. He can fight against cultivators who are 5 cultivation levels higher than him. Just watch, he'll be here soon. The surrounding people of the primeval Divine Lake were discussing animatedly, and the news kept spreading, attracting even more people to watch. All right, wait for me, shouted Yuan Jin. Then he took out a talisman and started communicating telepathically. Lu Ming watched calmly. The reason why he had directly accepted the other party's challenge and waited here was because he was a little curious. He was curious about the strength of primitive Divine Lake. Since the primordial Divine Lake dared to challenge the Heavenly Palace, it was not enough to have only high-end combat power. Lu Ming wanted to see how strong primitive Divine Lake's geniuses were. Besides, almost all the people of primitive Divine Lake practiced the primitive godly body. Lu Ming's past self practiced the primitive godly body. Lu Ming also wanted to see how strong he was. Another important reason was that Lu Ming's cultivation level had reached a bottleneck. He was stuck at the top of the 9th godly emperor layer. He couldn't break through for the time being. It would be difficult to break through if he just meditated in seclusion. It was better to fight against people of all kinds. Maybe he could find an opportunity to break through. That was hard to say. Therefore, if Yuan Jin wanted to fight, he wasn't afraid. Everybody waited calmly. They didn't have to wait for too long. In the distance, a few silhouettes appeared. One of them had red hair. His chi was similar to Yuan Jin's, but his chi was even more aggressive. Yuan Zhan really came. There's going to be a good show. Someone cried out in alarm, looking at the red-haired youth. Cousin, you've come. When Yuan Jin saw Yuan Zhan, he hurriedly went over to greet him with a smile. Where is the person you're talking about? Yuan Zhan was very direct and went straight to the point. That's the one. He's extremely arrogant. He said that he doesn't fear anyone from our primordial divine lake when fighting at the same level. Yuan Jin pointed at Lu Ming. What big words. I want to see how strong he is. Yuan Zhan looked at Lu Ming, a sharp light flashing in his eyes. A powerful burning aura pressed down on Lu Ming. Bang. Following that, he took a step forward, causing the void to tremble violently. An even more berserk aura burst forth. At the same time, his body rapidly grew in size until he was 1,000,000 zhang tall. He was also a giant ape covered in fiery red fur. The only difference was that he was not holding a staff. Instead, he was holding a saber. His aura was much stronger than Yuan Jin's. Take this. Divine Ape Slash. Yuan Zhan roared. He held the saber with both hands and slashed with all his might. The giant flaming saber slashed violently at Lu Ming. The flaming saber split the sky in half and slashed down at Lu Ming's head. The power was so strong that it was horrifying. Even an ordinary Emperor God expert would be shocked and would want to avoid it. It's indeed powerful. This person probably has a lot of primordial divine blood. His battle strength is equivalent to fighting someone 5 levels higher. Such a genius is comparable to the battle god Yuan Wen. A thought flashed through Lu Ming's mind. It seemed that the primordial divine lake was not weak. On second thought, it was normal. After all, they were an existence that dared to go against the heavenly palace. In addition, many people in the primordial divine lake were the descendants of the primordial divine spirit. Although their talents were not as strong as the pure primordial divine spirit, they were still terrifying. They were much stronger than ordinary races. Moreover, with the guidance of the real primordial divine spirit, it was normal for some monstrous geniuses to be born. Lu Ming believed that there must be more geniuses in the primordial divine lake who were more talented than Yuan Zhan. Lu Ming was getting more and more interested. However, Yuan Zhan was not a threat to Lu Ming. Lu Ming grabbed the air with his palm and a saber condensed in his hand as well. It was the Great God Saber technique, one of the 3,000 ancient secret skills. Whoosh! Lu Ming slashed with his saber. The two sabers met in the air and collided. With a clang, sparks flew and the two sabers vibrated violently. However, it was clear that Yuan Zhan's battle saber was vibrating even more violently. Then, his battle saber flew out of his hand and stabbed into a mountain in the distance, splitting the mountain in half. Everything in the surroundings was burned to ashes by the flames on the battle saber, including the rocks. At the same time, Yuan Zhan's body retreated rapidly. Every step he took caused a huge explosion in the void. The people behind him quickly retreated to avoid Yuan Zhan. Yuan Zhan widened his eyes and stared at Lu Ming in horror. He couldn't believe that his weapon was knocked away by Lu Ming in one move. That's all you got, Lu Ming said indifferently. He swung his saber again and a saber radiance flew towards Yuan Zhan. Yuan Zhan roared and tried to block with his fist. However, it was useless. A huge scar appeared on Yuan Zhan's body as the saber radiance slashed past. He let out a scream and his huge body shrunk rapidly to the size of an ordinary person. There was still a saber wound on his chest and blood kept flowing out. Yuan Zhan's face was covered in cold sweat. He felt that Lu Ming had the ability to kill him, but he had shown mercy. He felt that he had just taken a trip to the gates of hell. How can he be so powerful? Yuan Zhan's heart was in turmoil. At the side, Yuan Jin was also dumbstruck and his face turned pale. Even Yuan Zhan was no match for Lu Ming. Lu Ming's combat strength was far beyond his expectations. What kind of monster did he offend? The surrounding people were also dumbfounded and abnormally shocked. Even Yuan Zhan was no match for Lu Ming. Who in the Divine Emperor realm could defeat him? In the primitive godly lake, there were a few cultivators of the 9th godly emperor layer who were stronger than Yuan Zhan, but they were all in the primitive godly lake, looking for opportunities to break through to the great supreme god layer. Anyone else? Lu Ming asked again. He glanced at Yuan Jin, Yuan Zhan and the others. Yuan Zhan and the others pulled a long face. Lu Ming's meaning was obvious. Was there anyone else who wanted to continue attacking? He was waiting. In other words, Yuan Zhan and the others weren't strong enough. Chapter 4203. After being questioned by Lu Ming, Yuan Zhan, Yuan Jin, and the rest had ugly expressions. They gritted their teeth and remained silent, unable to say a word. Now, where were they going to find a stronger genius to deal with Lu Ming? Therefore, they could only remain silent. Interesting. I didn't expect such a powerful genius to appear after a period of seclusion. At that moment, a cold voice broke the silence. A figure walked over from the southwest. With every step he took, a flower petal would appear under his feet. It was a young man in white. He was very handsome and elegant. His temperament was poles apart from the others. The people of the primitive divine lake, regardless of gender, were more boorish and bold. Their aura was also more ancient and violent. This was related to the primitive divine body they cultivated and the descendants of the primitive divine spirit. However, this young man's temperament was completely different from the others of the primitive divine lake. It's Fei Yi. Fei Yi is here too. Is he going to fight? But hasn't he reached the God Emperor realm a long time ago? The arrival of the young man in white caused a lot of discussion. Lu Ming also looked at the young man in white with a serious expression. This young man gave him a lot of pressure. Lu Ming was naturally not afraid of anyone of the same level. However, his opponent was a God Emperor. His cultivation level was much higher and he was also a monstrous genius. Lu Ming felt a lot of pressure. Interesting. Fei Yi, are you going to fight? Another voice was heard. Another figure was coming from the northeast. It was also a young man. This young man had the typical temperament of the primitive divine lake world. He had a boorish figure and a wild temperament. He had a domineering aura. He carried a battle axe in his hand like a door plank. With every step he took, the void would shake. It was as though he was carrying a huge mountain on his back. It's Zhong Zhan. He's here too. This person is as famous as Fei Yi. It's not just him. Look in the other directions. A few more exclamations were heard. At that moment, a few young men appeared in the other directions. These young men all had unparalleled temperaments. They were not to be underestimated. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed. This was because these few young men gave him a lot of pressure. God Emperor. Without a doubt, they were all God Emperors. At his current level of cultivation, the only ones who could pressure him were the God Emperors. As a matter of fact, these young men were the strongest geniuses of the primordial godly lake world. They were usually in seclusion, but they had all shown up at the same time. Could it be that Flying Leaf, Zhong Zhan, and the others are going to make a move? They are celestial emperors. It's beneath their dignity to fight against celestial emperors with celestial emperors. That's true. But looking at their state, they seem to be very interested. It's possible that no one will make a move. Just watch. Many people were talking about it. Even many of the older generation people were looking forward to it. The clash between the geniuses of the younger generation had always attracted a lot of attention because it represented the future, represented hope. Yuan Zhan and Yuan Jin also revealed looks of anticipation. They were looking forward to someone taking action to suppress Lu Ming. What? You want to fight? Fei Yi glanced at the other young men. Of course I want to. However, to deal with him with the cultivation of a celestial emperor, I'm afraid others will laugh at me. Zhong Zhan shook his head. That's easy. Just suppress your cultivation. I'll go and test him, said Fei Yi. Then he looked at Lu Ming. His figure flickered and he appeared in front of Lu Ming. Don't worry. I won't use my cultivation to suppress you. I'll suppress my cultivation to the 9th godly emperor layer and fight with you. It's fair, Fei Yi said. His eyes were filled with confidence. Lu Ming smiled indifferently. He didn't think too much about it. Actually, even if a celestial emperor suppressed his cultivation to the same level as him, it wasn't fair. Because the higher one's cultivation was, the more beneficial it would be to awaken one's original divine strength. It would also be easier for one to comprehend original secret techniques. If Fei Yi had broken through to the celestial emperor layer for a period of time, his original divine strength and original secret techniques would definitely advance by leaps and bounds. It would be incomparable to a celestial emperor layer cultivator. Therefore, even if he suppressed his cultivation to the celestial emperor layer, the quality of his original divine strength and original secret techniques were all from the celestial emperor layer. It wasn't fair. For example, if he was a genius of the 4th cultivation level, he could fight against cultivators who were 4 cultivation levels higher than him. When he broke through to the celestial emperor layer and cultivated for a period of time, his original divine strength and original secret techniques would advance by leaps and bounds. Then, if he suppressed his cultivation level back to the celestial emperor layer, he would be as strong as a genius who could fight against cultivators who were 5 cultivation levels higher than him. Therefore, Fei Yi said that he would suppress his cultivation level and fight against Lu Ming to be fair. That was a bit shameless. However, Lu Ming didn't feel like pointing it out. If you want to fight, let's fight. That was Lu Ming's reply. It was simple and he was confident. You're very confident. I hope you have the ability to be confident. Be careful, Fei Yi said. As soon as his voice fell, a powerful aura spread out from his body. His body was shrouded by a layer of green divine light. Then, dense leaves appeared around him. These leaves were of different shapes. Some were sword-shaped, some were saber-shaped, some were pagoda-shaped, and some were human-shaped. Kill! Fei Yi shouted coldly. With a wave of his hand, countless leaves flew towards Lu Ming. Clang. The sword-shaped leaves made a sword cry and slashed towards Lu Ming like a divine sword. The saber-shaped leaves were like divine sabers. They burst out dazzling saber radiance and slashed towards Lu Ming's vital points. The pagoda-shaped leaves turned into a divine pagoda and pressed down on Lu Ming. The most peculiar thing was that the human-shaped leaves were actually using secret techniques to attack Lu Ming. In an instant, at least a few hundred attacks were launched towards Lu Ming. This is secret technique of origin? What a strange secret technique of origin. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. It was the first time he had seen this type of secret technique of origin. He had to admit that it was very mysterious and powerful. However, to compete with Lu Ming in terms of tricks? Then he had found the wrong person. Go. Lu Ming waved his hands. However, hundreds of secret techniques appeared between heaven and earth. Great Divine Wind Technique, Great Devil Sword Technique, Great Divine Pagoda Technique, Great Divine Saber Technique. So many secret techniques rushed towards the other party. This was not the Heavenly Palace. Lu Ming could control the secrets of many ancient secret techniques. He did not need to hide them and directly use them. Their attacks collided, causing a series of explosions to erupt. However, the duration of the explosion was very short. After a breath's time, the explosion stopped and the secret skill that Lu Ming had cast disappeared. The air was filled with leaves. However, these leaves were all split into 2 or 3 pieces. Obviously, the other party's attack was broken by Lu Ming. Chapter 4204. Seeing that his secret skill was easily broken by Lu Ming, Fei Ye's face darkened. Let's see how many moves you can take. A cold voice came out of Fei Ye's mouth. Then his body rapidly swelled up. Then a giant tree appeared between heaven and earth. Fei Yi turned into a giant tree. It was extremely huge, more than 1,000,000 feet tall. The tree crown opened up and covered the sky. It was like the legendary world divine tree. This is the primordial divine body? Lu Ming was slightly stunned. It was Lu Ming's first time seeing a plant-type primordial divine body. However, it wasn't strange. Not all primordial divine spirits were flesh and blood. There were also plant-type primordial divine spirits, but they were very rare. Obviously, Fei Yi was either the descendant of a plant-type primordial divine spirit or the primordial divine body that he cultivated was a plant-type primordial divine spirit. The giant tree that Fei Yi turned into was filled with leaves. These leaves were also of various colors and shapes. Then the giant tree shook. Countless leaves on the crown flew up and turned into various attacks, attacking Lu Ming. There were at least tens of thousands of densely packed attacks, covering a large area of the void. The power of these attacks was extremely terrifying. This move is interesting. Lu Ming revealed a faint smile. Then a ray of light emerged from his body and shrouded him. It was one of the 3,000 ancient secret skills, the Great Defense Skill. After Lu Ming used the Great Defense Skill, the attacks formed by the leaves had already landed on Lu Ming. Clang, clang, clang. These attacks landed on the Great Defense Skill and made the sound of metal clashing. Sparks flew and violent explosions were heard. However, none of the attacks could break through the Great Defense Skill's defense. They could only make the Great Defense Skill vibrate slightly. In the blink of an eye, at least tens of thousands of attacks landed on Lu Ming's body. However, it was useless. There was no effect at all. They couldn't break through the defense at all. Fei Ye's face was extremely ugly. How is this possible? How is this possible? Fei Yi roared in his heart. His face was red. He couldn't wait to unleash his God Emperor Realm cultivation and attack. However, there were so many people watching. If he were to use his God Emperor Realm cultivation base now, he would lose all his face. He wouldn't be able to survive in the primordial divine lake anymore. Therefore, he could only push his strength to the limit of the deity Emperor Realm, infinitely close to the God Emperor Realm. However, as long as they were in the divine Emperor Realm, even if they were infinitely close to the great God Emperor Realm, they were still divine emperors. The difference between them and the great God Emperor Realm was too great to affect Lu Ming. Around them, the spectators also widened their eyes and stared fixedly. What a terrifying defense. Looks like the flying leaf can't break his defense at all. His strength is unfathomable. I wonder how strong he is. Indeed. The surrounding people discussed animatedly. They were once again shocked by Lu Ming's strength. Based on the strength of the Divine Emperor layer, this man can fight someone who is 6.5 levels higher than him. Lu Ming speculated in his heart. In the Divine Emperor realm, being able to fight someone who is 6.5 levels higher than him was already very terrifying. Among all the geniuses that Lu Ming had met, only Yi Yu from the Heavenly Human Tribe was able to do so. However, Lu Ming speculated that if Fei Yi was in the Divine Emperor realm, he wouldn't have been able to fight someone who was 6.5 levels higher than him. After he had broken through to the God Emperor realm, he had used the God Emperor realm as his foundation to cultivate for a period of time. Whether it was the primitive divine body, origin secret skills, or divine power, he had made great progress. Then he suppressed his strength to the Divine Emperor realm to be able to fight someone who was 6.5 levels higher than him. Otherwise, Lu Ming speculated that the other party would be able to fight someone who was 5.5 levels higher than him in the Divine Emperor realm. For example, if a Divine Master Realm cultivator had reached an astonishing level in all aspects, such as origin secret skills, divine power, etc. If a Divine Master Realm cultivator suppressed his cultivation to the Divine Emperor realm, it wouldn't be difficult for him to fight someone who was 9 levels higher than him. That was why Fei Yi was astonished. He couldn't believe it. Although he was an Emperor God and had suppressed his cultivation to the 9th level of the Divine Emperor realm, he could fight someone who was 6.5 levels higher than him. However, he could not break through Lu Ming's defense. One could imagine how powerful Lu Ming was. He could fight someone who was 7 levels higher than him. Had such a monster appeared in the Primordial Divine Lake? It seems like that's all you've got. Let's end this battle then. At this moment, Lu Ming spoke in a faint voice. Then Lu Ming took a step forward and his body shot out like an arrow, piercing through the flying leaf. The moment he dashed out, Lu Ming threw a punch. This punch contained the great art of destruction, the great art of shattering, and a series of extremely destructive ancient secret skills. Wherever Lu Ming passed by, all the attacks of the flying leaves were defeated and all the leaves exploded. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ming appeared under Fei Ye's gigantic tree. His fist accurately hit the trunk of the tree. A terrifying fist energy moved towards the trunk of the tree. Oh no! Fei Ye's heart pounded violently. He could sense how terrifying Lu Ming's punch was. If he continued suppressing his strength, he would definitely be severely injured. At the critical moment, he could not be bothered to continue suppressing his cultivation level. Instead, he unleashed a powerful aura. The power of the God Thearch realm gushed out wildly, wanting to block Lu Ming's punch. Boom! There was an earth-shattering roar and Lu Ming's figure retreated rapidly. He was pushed back tens of thousands of meters before he stopped. However, Fei Ye's gigantic tree was also shaking violently. The gigantic trunk was also pushed back. A gigantic hole appeared in the middle of the trunk. The gigantic tree quickly shrank and turned back into Fei Yi. At that moment, Fei Ye's face was pale. There was blood on the corner of his mouth. Even though he had released the strength of a great god, he was still injured. Firstly, the strength of Lu Ming's punch was indeed shockingly powerful. Secondly, Fei Yi had released the strength of a great god on the spur of the moment. At that moment he couldn't fully release his strength. Therefore, even though he managed to block Lu Ming's attack, he still suffered some injuries. You've lost. Lu Ming stood in the void and looked at Fei Yi indifferently. According to the agreement, Fei Yi had to suppress his cultivation to the Divine Emperor realm. Now that he had released the strength of a great god, it was equivalent to losing. Fei Yi's face was gloomy. Cold light flickered continuously as he stared at Lu Ming. He had indeed lost. He knew that he wasn't Lu Ming's opponent when they were at the same level. He couldn't wait to use his full strength to suppress Lu Ming. However, that would be even more embarrassing. Fei Yi snorted coldly. He walked to the side and stopped talking. Who else wants to come up and try? Lu Ming's gaze swept towards Song Zhan and the others. Song Zhan and the others looked gloomy. However, none of them came out to fight. They knew their own strength. After suppressing their cultivation to the Divine Emperor realm, they were at most on par with Fei Yi. They were definitely not Lu Ming's opponent. Chapter 4205. No one stepped forward to fight with Lu Ming. The surrounding spectators were also discussing animatedly. Is there no one in the Primordial Divine Lake who can fight with him? It's difficult. There's almost no one who can surpass Fei Yi in a battle of the same level. This person's combat strength is really terrifying. Unless he's a pure Primordial Divine Spirit, but how can there be a young Primordial Divine Spirit in this era? Some people sighed. It was difficult to find someone who could match Lu Ming in a battle of the same level. No one else? Lu Ming whispered, a little disappointed. He originally wanted to look around to see if there were any opponents to fight with, but it seemed like he was going to be disappointed. Not necessarily. There's someone who can definitely defeat him. Have you forgotten about that monster? Suddenly someone shouted. Everyone looked over and saw that it was Yuan Jin. At first it was Yuan Jin who provoked Lu Ming, but now Lu Ming was in the limelight, slapping him in the face. This made him extremely unhappy and he wanted someone to suppress Lu Ming. Hearing Yuan Jin's words, many people seemed to have thought of something, and their expressions changed. You mean that monster? Someone asked. That's right, that monster. Yuan Jin gritted his teeth and nodded. But that monster is extremely arrogant. He doesn't like ordinary people at all, and his temper is very strange. Who can invite him? That's right, and I heard that he travels in the Primordial Divine Lake all year round. Even if you want to find him, you can't find him. Some people shook their heads. As far as I know, that monster hasn't been in the Primordial Divine Lake during this period. He's in seclusion in his residence, Yuan Jin said. Even if he's in seclusion in his residence, who can invite him here? He doesn't give face to anyone except for the Divine Master Realm Masters. Someone said. I'll invite him, Yuan Jin gritted his teeth. In order to suppress Lu Ming, he was going to go all out. Kid, do you dare to wait here for a while? I'll find someone stronger to suppress you. Yuan Jin looked at Lu Ming and said. Someone stronger? Don't disappoint me again. Lu Ming said lightly. As soon as this was said, Fei Ye's expression turned even uglier. Lu Ming was implying that he had disappointed Lu Ming. Don't worry, that person's strength has exceeded your imagination, Yuan Jin said. Oh, in that case I'll wait here. After that, Lu Ming walked to Autumn Moon's side and started chatting and laughing with Autumn Moon. Brat, just you wait. Yuan Jin roared in his heart. He was extremely jealous. Then he turned around and left. Yuan Jin, I'll go with you. Yuan Zhan said and followed Yuan Xie. The huge city that Lu Ming and the others were in was to the east of the Primordial Divine Lake. And the person Yuan Jin and the others wanted to invite was not in this city, but in the city north of the Primordial Divine Lake. They flew quickly and soon arrived at the city in the north. Then they came to a small hill. On the small hill there was a simple wooden house. It looked ordinary, but it was simple and elegant. As soon as they arrived, Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan could not help but feel nervous. They looked at each other and saw the cold sweat on each other's face. It seemed that there was something in the wooden house that they were very afraid of. Yuan Jin, are you really going to alert that monster? In my opinion, let's just forget about it. Yuan Zhan said and was a little hesitant. Yuan Jin was also a little guilty. However, in order to suppress Lu Ming, he gritted his teeth and said, Invite him, we must invite him. That brat embarrassed me in public. I must teach him a lesson. Then, have you thought of a reason to ask? Yuan Zhan asked. Don't worry, that monster is arrogant, but he's also extremely battle-hungry. He loves to fight with top monsters. When he knows that there's a particularly powerful monster, he'll definitely make a move, Yuan Jin said. As they spoke, the two of them were not far from the wooden house. You two, I'll give you 3 breaths time to get lost. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. At that moment, a cold voice came from the wooden house. Hearing this figure, Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan's bodies suddenly trembled as if they were startled. Yuan Jin swallowed his saliva and tried to steady himself. He said, There's a new peerless monster in the Primordial Godly Lake. He's extremely strong. I want you to exchange pointers with him. I'm not interested. You can leave now. That voice rang out, directly refusing. Don't be in such a hurry to refuse. That person is really strong. He has the strength of the 9th Godly Emperor layer, but Fei Yi suppressed his cultivation to the 9th Godly Emperor layer and he defeated him in one strike, said Yuan Jin hastily. Oh. This time, the voice in the wooden house let out a soft, oh, as if it was more interested in the story. Fei Yi suppressed his cultivation to the 9th Godly Emperor layer and he defeated him in one strike? Interesting. After that, the door of the wooden house opened and a young man appeared in front of Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan. This was a young man. He was tall and slender with firm muscles. He was wearing a simple gray robe. Just by standing there casually, he exuded a terrifying aura. It was as if a terrifying cultivator was hiding inside his body and he could attack at any moment. Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan didn't dare breathe too loudly when they saw that young man. They couldn't help but recall the scene of them being oppressed by that young man. If Lu Ming had been there, he would have been pleasantly surprised. Because Lu Ming knew that young man. He was Lu Ming's old friend. The Wan Shen. Indeed, that young man was the Wan Shen. Back then, Lu Ming and the Wan Shen had entered the primordial godly spirit world together. In the end, the Wan Shen had followed the strong cultivators of the primordial godly spirit world to another world, a world that was more suitable for the Wanshen to practice cultivation. Lu Ming had left the primordial godly spirit world and they had parted. I hope you're telling the truth. If I find out you're lying to me, you know the consequences. The Wanshen glanced coldly at Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan. After so many years, the Wanshen's temperament had changed greatly. He had become much sharper and more domineering. Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan both quivered with fear. When the Wanshen had first arrived, they had used their cultivation to bully the Wanshen. However, they hadn't expected that the Wanshen would display such terrifying talent. His cultivation would increase rapidly and so would his combat strength. Soon, his cultivation would catch up to theirs and he would oppress them several times. Moreover, the Wanshen's talent was valued by all the strong cultivators of the primordial godly lake. In terms of background, they couldn't compare to the Wanshen. From then on, the Wanshen had left a shadow in their hearts. If they hadn't wanted to teach Lu Ming a lesson, they wouldn't have come to deal with the Wanshen. It's true. It's definitely true. That guy is really powerful. I believe you won't be disappointed, Yuan Jin said hurriedly. Chapter 4206. Is that so? Interesting. Then let's go meet that fellow. The myriad gods smiled as he stepped into the air. Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan were pleasantly surprised as they hurriedly followed. On the other end, Lu Ming, Qiu Moon and the others were quietly waiting. Qiu Moon was not worried about Lu Ming. After exchanging blows with the celestial soldiers and divine generals, she was well aware of Lu Ming's strength. As long as his opponent did not use cultivation to suppress Lu Ming, she did not believe that anyone could be stronger than Lu Ming in a battle of the same level. Her young master had never disappointed her. He's here. Suddenly, someone cried out in alarm and looked in a certain direction. Simultaneously, everyone's gaze turned in that direction. It's him. It's that monster. He's really here. I didn't think that Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan would really be able to invite that monster. There's going to be a good show to watch. Quick, get someone to come and watch the show. That monster is about to attack. Many people couldn't help but shout. Even some of the older generation members couldn't help but get excited. The strength that Lu Ming had displayed was extremely powerful, but that monster was even more terrifying in their hearts. A fierce battle was certain to follow. Many people took out their voice transmission jade talismans and called for others to come and watch. Coupled with those who had rushed over after hearing the news, this region was now packed with people. In the sky and on the ground there were people everywhere. Lu Ming followed everyone's gazes. He was also very curious as to what sort of person the people of the primal divine lake called a monster, and how strong he was. However, Lu Ming was stunned when he saw it. Lu Ming opened his mouth slightly and widened his eyes in disbelief. The myriad god. He naturally recognized the myriad god at a glance. Although the myriad god's temperament had changed significantly, his appearance and life essence aura had not changed at all. He could be recognized at a glance. Lu Ming had not expected to meet the myriad god here. Could it be that the world the myriad gods went to was the primordial divine lake world? That's right. The primordial divine lake has pure primordial divine spirits. The others are either descendants of the primordial divine spirits or existences who cultivate the primordial divine body. It is very similar to the primordial divine spirit world, but the environment is better and the level is higher. I should have thought of this earlier. What a coincidence. Back then I wasn't able to go to that world, but now I've come here using this method. In an instant, many thoughts appeared in Lu Ming's mind. This brat is scared. At this moment Yuan Jin, Yuan Zhan, and Wan Shen had arrived. When Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan saw the dumbfounded expression on Lu Ming's face, they thought that Lu Ming was afraid. They sneered inwardly and looked forward to seeing Lu Ming being suppressed by the myriad gods. Which one are you talking about? Myriad god asked. It's him. Yuan Jin hurriedly said to Lu Ming. Myriad god's gaze fell on Lu Ming, but it only circled around Lu Ming. When his gaze fell on Autumn Moon, he was stunned. Back in the Taishu dynasty, Myriad god had seen Autumn Moon before. Myriad god's face was immediately filled with joy. In a flash, he appeared in front of Autumn Moon. Lu Ming didn't stop him because the other party was Myriad god. Why should he stop him? Moreover, he realized that even if he wanted to stop him, he couldn't because Myriad god's cultivation was too high. He was certain that Myriad god had stepped into the God Emperor realm. He wasn't sure what God Emperor realm Myriad god was exactly, but he felt that Myriad god's body contained boundless and terrifying energy that was unfathomable. Miss Autumn Moon, you are Miss Autumn Moon. Why are you here? The Myriad god said with a look of joy. Myriad god, why are you here? Autumn Moon also recognized Myriad God and asked curiously. Haha, didn't Lu Ming tell you? Back then, I went to a place to cultivate. That place is here. By the way, where's Lu Ming? Didn't he come with you? Myriad God laughed. He didn't have the sharp temperament from before. His gaze swept around as if he was looking for Lu Ming. Isn't young master right in front of you? Autumn Moon smiled and then took Lu Ming's hand. You mean, he's Lu Ming? Miss Autumn Moon, don't lie to me. His life origin aura is completely different. Miss Autumn Moon, are you lying to me because you have fallen in love with someone else? Myriad God obviously didn't believe her. As he spoke, his face sank and he stared at Lu Ming with hostility. What nonsense are you talking about? That's young Master Lu Ming. Autumn Moon's face turned red as she stomped her feet. Myriad God, I've changed my life origin aura because I've cultivated a special cultivation method. It's normal that you don't recognize me. However, I'm indeed Lu Ming. Don't you remember the first time we met? Lu Ming said with a smile. Then he briefly recounted the first time he met Myriad God. Are you really Lu Ming? The Myriad Gods were still somewhat skeptical. If Lu Ming was alone, even if Lu Ming recounted the first time they met, Myriad God wouldn't believe him. He would think that Lu Ming's memory had been stolen. However, with Autumn Moon around, he had no choice but to believe it. Yes, that's Lu Ming. I can testify. Chiu jumped out and said. You're here too. Looks like you're really Lu Ming. I didn't expect you to change so much after not seeing you for so many years. I almost couldn't recognize you. Myriad God said. He looked at Lu Ming and smiled. You've changed a lot too. Your strength is even more unfathomable. Lu Ming laughed and hugged Myriad God. The others on the side were dumbfounded. What was going on? They originally thought that Myriad God would attack Lu Ming. They didn't expect Myriad God and Lu Ming to know each other as if they were old friends. Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan were especially dumbfounded. They had gone to great lengths to invite Myriad God here just to deal with Lu Ming. What was going on? It was completely different from what they had expected. Wan Xin were talking about him. You, quickly suppress him, Yuan Jin couldn't help but shout. However, he regretted it after shouting. His face turned pale. Sure enough, Myriad God turned around and looked at him with a gloomy face. You two called me here just to deal with my brother? Are you itching for a bone? Then I'll help you fix it. Run. Before Myriad God could finish his words, Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan's faces changed drastically. They retreated without thinking. You want to run in front of me? Myriad God shouted coldly. He stretched out a hand and grabbed at the air. Suddenly, an incomparably huge palm appeared in the sky and pressed down on Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan. It was as if a giant had suddenly appeared in the sky. No! Yuan Zhan and Yuan Jin roared and resisted with all their strength. However, their strength couldn't withstand a single blow from this palm. With a boom, the two of them smashed into the ground like two meteors. Chapter 4207. Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan were smashed to the ground by Wan Xin's palm. They lay on the ground, twitching and coughing up blood. It was a horrible sight. Their faces were pale and their bones were almost all broken. The others on the side looked pale, but no one dared to say anything. Even Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan's elders didn't dare to say anything. First, Wan Xin's strength was too strong. Second, Wan Xin's identity was too special. He had unparalleled talent, and all the important people of the Primordial Divine Lake had high hopes for him. He was known as the seed of hope of the Primordial Divine Spirit clan. No one could beat Wan Xin in terms of background. Who dared to touch him? Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan's elders could only turn a blind eye. After dealing with Yuan Jin and Yuan Zhan, Wan Xin looked at Fei Yi and said coldly, I heard that you attacked my brother. What? Are you bullying him because he's new here or because you're a great supreme god? Fei Yi's face turned pale and he explained, Wan Xin, I was just exchanging pointers with him. Exchanging pointers? Oh, I'll also exchange pointers with you. Come on. Wan Xin said as he stepped forward and walked toward Fei Yi. Fei Yi's face turned even uglier and he shouted, Don't go too far. Yes, I'm going too far. What can you do about it? Wan Xin sneered and continued walking toward Fei Yi. Don't think that I'm afraid of you. Flying Leaf was enraged by the myriad gods pressuring. He roared and unleashed his aura. He once again transformed into a towering tree. This time the tree he transformed into was more than 10 times taller than before. It blotted out the sky and the sun, and its aura covered the mountains and rivers. His aura was terrifying. That's the second layer of the great supreme god realm. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. Fei Yi released his aura and his strength was shocking. He had the strength of the second layer of the Great Supreme God Realm. He wasn't an ordinary cultivator of the second layer of the Great Supreme God Realm, but a peerless genius. He could probably fight against an ordinary cultivator of the fourth layer of the Great Supreme God Realm. If he attacked with his full strength, Lu Ming wouldn't be his match. Lu Ming couldn't help but worry for Wan Xin. However, Wan Xin's expression didn't change in front of such a vast aura. Come. The myriad god said indifferently. You forced me to do this. Die. Fei Yi roared and countless leaves flew out from the huge treetop. This time the leaves did not scatter. Instead, they gathered together and transformed into a beam of green light that blasted towards the myriad gods. The strength of his aura was many times stronger than when he was dealing with Lu Ming. Seeing this move, Lu Ming knew that he would not be able to block it with his own strength, unless he used the mysterious ice rod. However, the myriad god remained calm. Boom. At this moment, Wan Xin moved. The muscles on one of his arms bulged, and there was divine power circulating on it. Then he punched out. Heaven and earth shook violently as a terrifying fist energy burst forth from Wan Xin's fist and collided with Fei Ye's attack. Then one could see that Fei Ye's attack was as weak as tofu. He was directly pierced through by Wan Xin's fist. The fist energy didn't stop there. It bombarded the trunk of the huge tree that Fei Yi had transformed into, and a huge hole was blasted open. A mournful scream was heard as the huge tree rapidly shrank. Fei Yi turned back into his human form and there was a hole in his abdomen. Blood was flowing out. Fei Yi kept coughing up blood. His face was pale and his aura was weak. He had been severely injured. However, his eyes were still fixed on the myriad god. He shouted in disbelief, Your cultivation has broken through again? Don't worry. I only used the cultivation of the second layer of the Emperor God realm. Why would I need to use a higher cultivation to deal with you? The myriad god said indifferently. Fei Yi was so angry that he coughed up another mouthful of blood. The surrounding geniuses were also pale. They looked at Lu Ming in shock. The myriad god's divine power had become even stronger. It seemed to have surpassed theirs. So powerful. The myriad god's improvement is too fast. His future is limitless. His talent is too strong. Our primordial divine spirit clan has a chance to rise. Some of the older generation figures who were watching the battle sighed. However, their voices were filled with surprise. This guy is really monstrous. Even Lu Ming couldn't help but sigh. He knew the myriad god's background. The myriad god had evolved from the blood of many primordial divine spirits. He had great potential and talent. It was really terrifying. Now, Lu Ming still couldn't see through the myriad god's cultivation. However, Lu Ming estimated that the myriad god's cultivation was above the third layer of the Emperor God realm. Relying on his forbidden body, his cultivation speed was already monstrous. However, the myriad god seemed to be even more monstrous. It seemed like the primordial divine lake was really suitable for the myriad god's cultivation. The myriad god had made the right choice to come here. Who else wants to try? After dealing with Fei Yi, the myriad god didn't even look at Fei Yi. He looked at Song Zhan and the others. Song Zhan and the others turned pale. They looked unsightly. Haha, the myriad god, we're just here to watch the show. We have no intention of fighting. Right. I'm just here to watch the show. Only Fei Yi will fight. Right, I remember that I have something to do. I'll leave first. I also have something to do. Song Zhan and the other geniuses who were as famous as Fei Yi found excuses to leave. The myriad god, you're very impressive now. Lu Ming walked over and laughed. These people are just itching for a beating. If you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. They'll have no choice but to use some thunderous methods. The myriad god smiled. Right, where are you staying now? The myriad god asked again. On that mountain. Lu Ming pointed to the mountain peak in the distance that they had come down from earlier. Oh, then let's go up. I still have many questions to ask you. The myriad god said. Then Lu Ming and the others returned the way they had come. On the way they chatted as they walked. Lu Ming briefly recounted his experiences over the years and why his life origin aura had changed. Lu Ming was wary of the Heavenly Palace. In the Heavenly Palace, these things could never be spoken of. However, the primordial divine lake was at odds with the Heavenly Palace. In that case, there was no harm in speaking of it. It did not matter if others knew that he had a taboo body. I see. To think that there's such a mysterious cultivation method in this world that can sever the past and future. Even the life origin aura is different. The myriad god exclaimed. Right, myriad god, is this the world you came from? Lu Ming asked again. That's right. The myriad god nodded and explained, There's a passage in the Primordial Divine Lake that connects to the Primordial Divine Spirit world. These two worlds are actually very similar. They both gave birth to Primordial Divine Spirits. They both gave birth to Primordial Divine Spirits? Lu Ming was shocked. Chapter 4208. A place that gave birth to a Primordial Divine Spirit was no small matter. Yes, but the Primordial Divine Lake is of a higher level. In the Primordial Divine Lake, 72 Primordial Divine Spirits were born. Moreover, the territory here is larger and the cultivation environment is better. There are Primordial Divine Spirits and other experts guarding it. The Primordial Divine Spirit world that we went to was considered the peripheral world of the Primordial Divine Lake. We were looking for geniuses who cultivated the Primordial Divine Body, Wan Shen continued to explain. Looking for geniuses who cultivated the Primordial Divine Spirit Body and bringing them to this world? However, many of the races outside are controlled by the Heavenly Palace. Lu Ming said with a look of doubt. Because the Heavenly Palace ruled the universe, the races of the universe all obeyed the orders of the Heavenly Palace. But here they were looking for geniuses who cultivated the Primordial Divine Body. Wasn't this raising a tiger to invite calamity? So, at first, we only brought them to the peripheral worlds to let them cultivate. If there are outstanding geniuses who are suitable for training, we will consider bringing them to the Primordial Divine Lake. However, before bringing them here they have to go through many tests and tests. Only those who reject the Heavenly Palace and can be used by the Primordial Divine Lake will be brought to the Primordial Divine Lake for training. However, there are very few of them. There is no other way. The Primordial Divine Lake has few geniuses, so we can only look for them from the outside. Those who are not suitable will be sent back, Wan Shen explained. Lu Ming suddenly thought of Murong Qiushui. Murong Qiushui should have made contact with the experts of the Primordial Divine Lake. It was said that he was taken in as a disciple by an important person. However, they met later on in the primitive universe. Now that he thought about it, Murong Qiushui should have failed the test and been sent out. The Primordial Divine Lake world has existed since the beginning of the universe. It has been passed down until now and has always been fighting with the Heavenly Palace. However, the Heavenly Palace is too strong and the Primordial Divine Lake is no match for it. It can only float in the universe. Saying this, Wan Shen's eyes filled with hatred. Now I know that the Primordial Divine Spirit Body was destroyed by the Heavenly Palace. The blood of the Primordial Divine Spirit flows in my body. As they spoke, they returned to the mountain. Although ordinary people couldn't come up to this mountain peak, however, Myriad God had a special status. He could go anywhere in the 4 cities of the Primordial Divine Lake. Lu Ming, I heard that you are very strong. You easily defeated Fei Yi in a battle of the same level. My hands are itching. Why don't we have a spar? The Myriad God said. If I were to spar with you, wouldn't I be looking for trouble? I can't even see through your cultivation. Lu Ming shook his head. What a joke. Flying Leaf, who had unleashed his full combat strength, had been beaten half to death by Wan Shen's punch. He was not looking for trouble. Haha, of course I won't use my cultivation level to oppress you. I'll suppress my cultivation level to the 9th Godly Emperor layer. The Myriad God Dao looked like he was itching for a fight. Oh, that's fine. Lu Ming nodded in agreement. He was also very curious about how strong Myriad God was. Back when he had just separated from Myriad God's ability to fight across levels wasn't particularly exaggerated. However, he knew very well that it was because the potential of the myriad deities had yet to be unlocked. So many years had passed. How much potential had the myriad deities developed? Wan Shen and Lu Ming found a spacious area and stood facing each other. The 3 people from Autumn Moon and Qiuqiu stood in the distance and watched. Lu Ming, be careful, said the Myriad God Dao as he released his aura. It was the aura of the 9th Godly Emperor layer. The Myriad God Dao had suppressed his cultivation level to the 9th Godly Emperor layer. Bang! The Myriad God Dao took a step forward and charged at Lu Ming like a bolt of lightning. As he charged, the Myriad God Dao's muscles twitched. His body was covered in a layer of divine power as he threw a punch at Lu Ming. Wherever the fist passed, the void rumbled and exploded. Its power was terrifying. Good! Shouted Lu Ming. He circulated his forbidden energy and his body was covered in a layer of dazzling light. He threw a punch at the Myriad God Dao as well. This punch contained several ancient secret skills with astonishing offensive power. Boom! When the 2 fists collided, it was like 2 stars colliding, producing a powerful shockwave. Then, Lu Ming and the Myriad God Dao's bodies trembled at the same time as they retreated. What powerful strength! Lu Ming felt his fist go slightly numb. Although he hadn't used his full strength just now, the power he erupted with was already very shocking. It was at least at the stage where he could fight across 7 levels. However, it couldn't do anything to the myriad god Dao. The moment the two fists collided, he felt that the power of the myriad god Dao's fist was astonishing. It was pure physical strength and divine power strength. The myriad god Dao's physical body had boundless strength and was terrifyingly powerful. He was like a true primordial god. His divine power was rich and condensed, pure and ancient. It was equivalent to awakening the divine power quintessence multiple times. In short, it was boundless and indestructible. It was extremely terrifying. Powerful. Much more powerful than before. This divine power should be equivalent to awakening the divine power quintessence 8 times. Lu Ming praised inwardly. The myriad god Dao had evolved from a large number of primordial gods' flesh and blood. He cultivated all kinds of primordial divine power and awakened the divine power quintessence. His talent was too strong. His current divine power was comparable to that of someone who had awakened the divine power quintessence 8 times. Otherwise, how could he contend against the taboo power? Is this the taboo power? So powerful. Aha, Lu Ming, you didn't use your full strength, right? Neither did I. Let's go all out then. Don't hold back. The myriad god Dao laughed, his fighting spirit surging. As you wish. Lu Ming roared. All the cells in his body trembled. All kinds of secret techniques and ancient secret techniques in his cells erupted and merged together. Shwa. Lu Ming's palm was like a blade as he chopped down. A huge blade light slashed at the myriad god Dao. This move was a combination of even more ancient secret techniques. For example, the Great God Saber art, Great Shatter art, Great Destruction art, Great Aurora art. This move contained many kinds of terrifying offensive power. Its power was even more terrifying than before. Gate of Domination. The myriad god Dao roared. Above his head, a huge stone door appeared. It was ancient and powerful. This was the origin secret technique, Gate of Domination. Lu Ming had controlled it before. Now it was in his past body. The huge Gate of Domination rushed toward Lu Ming, letting out a terrifying roar. Shockingly, an enormous monster emerged from the Sovereign Lord's gate. This monster was incomparably huge and looked very ferocious. There were several huge horns on its head. This is a primordial god? No, it's a primordial god's soul. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. He did not expect that the Gate of Domination could be cultivated to such a high level that it could summon the corresponding primordial god's soul. Chapter 4209. The soul of the primordial god that appeared in the Gate of Domination opened its bloody mouth and bit down on the saber gleam that Lu Ming had slashed out. However, it only lasted for a few breaths of time before the primordial god's soul couldn't withstand the saber light's attack. It opened its mouth and was cleaved in half, its body rapidly retreating. Clang. The saber light followed, slashing at the god's gate. The god's gate shook violently and flew back to Wan Shen. However, the saber gleam that Lu Ming slashed out was blocked. Amazing. Again 10,000 Law's spear colored glass fire. Wan Shen growled. His divine power grew even stronger, pushing it to the peak of the 9th godly emperor realm. All sorts of secret techniques appeared above his head. Soon, more than 20 secret techniques appeared above Wan Shen's head. All of them were origin secret techniques. More than 20 origin secret techniques all exuded a terrifying aura. Every origin secret technique severed at least 6 shackles. Some of them even severed 7 shackles. Lu Ming's pupils shrank. It was too shocking. At myriad god's age and cultivation level, even if he could sever 6 or 7 shackles of a single origin technique, he would be 1 in 10,000. He would be a peerless monster. All God, on the other hand, had over 20 quintessence secret arts that had reached this level. Lu Ming, if you can't handle it, you have to speak, Wan Shen said. Don't worry. Go all out. Lu Ming's eyes shone brightly, revealing a powerful battle intent. It was rare for him to show such an expression in a battle of the same level. This was because he felt pressured. He'd already reached the limit of the godly emperor realm. He could fight across 9 levels. He'd originally thought that no one would be able to pressure him in a battle of the same level. He hadn't expected Wan Shen to be able to do so. Boom. Lu Ming activated the battle character art, increasing his battle prowess to the peak by 6 times. Wan Shen's eyes lit up. Alright, so you still have something up your sleeve. Then I won't hold back. With that, myriad god charged towards Lu Ming. Over 20 origin source secret techniques also shot towards Lu Ming. Every origin source secret technique emitted terrifying ripples. Some were fast, some were very hot, and some were as heavy as a mountain. Each origin source secret technique had its own characteristics, but they all had one thing in common, which was that their attack power was extremely shocking. Good timing. Lu Ming's fighting spirit surged as he pushed his forbidden power to the limit. With a wave of his hand, various secret techniques appeared around him. They were all ancient secret techniques, and there were even more of them than the myriad gods. The secret techniques of both sides clashed in the air. Boom, boom, boom. Amidst the dazzling light, the two of them fought fiercely. Every second there would be hundreds of collisions. This area was completely enveloped by all kinds of divine light. Ordinary people couldn't see the situation inside at all. They could only hear a series of violent rumbles. The terrifying energy swept out in all directions, and some of it continuously bombarded the ground. However, this mountain was the place where the divine lords and primordial divine spirits cultivated in seclusion. It was extremely tough, and their attacks couldn't even leave a mark on it. This was also the reason why they chose to fight here. In the distance, Chiu Moon and the others circulated their divine power to their eyes. With their God Emperor cultivation they could see the battle clearly. So terrifying, what kind of monsters are they? Is this still the power of a God Emperor? They're really sick. How many levels can they cross to fight? Anyway, I'm definitely no match for them. The beautiful faces of Chiu Yu's two senior sisters were filled with shock. It was already a miracle for such a person to appear, but now they saw two of them. It was really a miracle of miracles. The battle between the two of them became more and more intense. In the beginning the two of them still held back. After all, they were friends and were only sparring, so they were afraid of hurting each other. However, after exchanging blows, they realized that each other's strength was above their expectations. Therefore they became more at ease and slowly raised their fighting strength to the peak. Soon, the two of them had exchanged hundreds of blows, but there was still no clear winner. Awesome. Lu Ming's fighting spirit grew stronger and stronger. He casually used all kinds of ancient secret techniques. However, Wan Xin's strength was also very terrifying. He had used more than 20 offensive origin source secret techniques at the beginning. Later he used other origin source secret techniques such as defensive ones, speed ones, and so on. When combined, his fighting strength was about the same as Lu Ming's. The two of them couldn't do anything to each other. Later on, Lu Ming even triggered the battle formula to increase his fighting strength by 7 times. However, he discovered that it was the same as last time. After activating the battle character incantation, the strength of his taboo power actually decreased. This caused his battle strength to remain at the level where he could fight across 9 levels, unable to surpass it. Lu Ming knew that this was the limit, and it was difficult to surpass it. Soon the two of them had exchanged hundreds of blows. Boom. Finally, with a heaven-shaking explosion, the two of them retreated at the same time and stood facing each other. Amazing. Lu Ming, you are many times more powerful than before. Wan Xin sighed as he gradually withdrew his aura. The battle had reached this point and there was no need to continue. Lu Ming also withdrew his aura, and the fluctuations coming from his body weakened. Wan Xin, you're the amazing one. I originally thought that I could suppress you after obtaining the forbidden power, but it seems like I was overthinking things. Lu Ming said. He couldn't help but sigh. Wan Xin was just too powerful. After fusing many ancient secret techniques and ancient secret techniques, his forbidden power had received a massive boost in quality. It was invincible and terrifying. However, Wan Xin's divine body was too strong, and his origin source divine power had been awakened too many times. Coupled with the origin source secret techniques that had severed many shackles, he was completely capable of contending against Wan Xin. In truth, I lost. Your battle strength has already reached the limit of the deity emperor realm. You can fight across 9 levels. Even though I can fight against cultivators who are 9 cultivation levels higher than me, that's because I'm suppressing my cultivation level. My original cultivation level is the Great Supreme God layer. After breaking through to the Great Supreme God layer, my original strength and my original secret techniques have advanced by leaps and bounds. Even though I'm suppressing my cultivation level to the 9th Godly Emperor layer, my original strength and my original strength haven't changed. When I was in the Deity Emperor realm, I could only fight across 8 levels. That's why I lost. Wan Xin said. Don't be modest. Come, let's drink. Lu Ming smiled and walked over to pat Wan Xin's shoulder. After a while, the rich aroma of meat wafted out of Lu Ming's residence. Lu Ming had a large pile of storage rings on him, and there were all sorts of things in them. Fine wine, ingredients, spices, and other things were naturally not lacking. Although he didn't need to eat now and wasn't hungry, he would still occasionally eat to satisfy his cravings. Chapter 42:10. The group chatted as they ate. Lu Ming, you said that your past self mainly cultivates various kinds of divine powers. Why don't you come here to cultivate? Here you can cultivate various kinds of divine powers and origin secret skills. The effects are very good. Myriad gods said. I had such a plan. Lu Ming nodded. Then come. Let me tell you, there are great opportunities in the primordial divine lake. The reason I cultivated so quickly is because of the opportunities one found in the primordial divine lake. When your past self comes, we can go together. Myriad gods said. That lake in the primordial divine lake? Lu Ming looked toward the west. That's right. That lake is called the primordial divine lake. That's how this world got its name. In ancient times, 72 primordial divine spirits were born from that lake, the primordial divine spirit said. Myriad god explained. All of them were born from that lake. This time Lu Ming, Qiuyu and the others were shocked. They had heard that 72 primordial divine spirits were born in the primordial divine lake world. They had thought that these 72 primordial divine spirits were spread out, and different regions gave birth to different primordial divine spirits. For example, the primordial divine spirit world that Lu Ming had been to had 13 famous mountains, and each mountain had given birth to a primordial divine spirit. But it was different here. The 72 primordial divine spirits were all born from that lake. This was a little shocking. Yes. Moreover, these 72 primordial divine spirits were born from eggs. After they left, the eggshells were left behind. These eggshells are peerless treasures for those who cultivate divine power. They are extremely beneficial for cultivating divine power, awakening divine power, and comprehending origin secret arts. In the primordial divine lake world, even a fingernail-sized eggshell is priceless. It's very useful even for high-level god emperors. Moreover, there are primordial divine clouds and diluted divine herbs in the primordial divine lake. They are all very valuable. Myriad god said. The primordial divine lake shouldn't be easy to enter, right? Lu Ming said. Naturally, he would not be blindly overjoyed. Since there were so many precious treasures in the primordial divine lake, if they could be obtained easily, then how could they have stayed until now? You're right. The waves of the primordial divine lake are monstrous. Moreover, the water of the primordial divine lake is not ordinary water. Every drop of water is extremely heavy and accompanied by huge waves. Its power is extremely shocking. In addition, there is also an incomparably powerful pressure. It is very difficult for ordinary people to barge in. Only those with great talent can enter easily. That place has become a training ground for the young geniuses of the primordial divine lake. It's also a treasure hunting ground. Tell your past self to come here. Once you get some primordial divine spirit eggshells, your cultivation base will definitely improve by leaps and bounds. Myriad gods Dao. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. Alright, I'll open the wormhole and let my past self come over. Lu Ming nodded. Immediately he took out 36 formation discs and injected his forbidden energy into them. Suddenly the 36 discs floated in the air, emitting a bright light. A vortex appeared in the middle, spinning continuously. Everyone waited quietly. After a period of time, a wormhole was successfully opened. Qiu Moon and the others stared at the wormhole with bright eyes. Not long after, a figure suddenly appeared in the wormhole. The figure was slender and his long hair fluttered in the wind. He slowly became clearer. Young master. Qiu Moon could not help but exclaim in surprise. That's right. The figure was Lu Ming's past self. His appearance and aura were exactly the same as Lu Ming's past self. Although Lu Ming's current self was still Lu Ming, his appearance and aura were different after all. Qiuyu felt a little strange in her heart. At this moment, when she saw his past self, she felt closer to him and immediately flew over. Qiu Moon. Lu Ming's past self smiled and nodded. His figure then left the wormhole and appeared on the ground. Lu Ming's current self waved his hand and put away the 36 formation discs. Lu Ming, this is your past self? TSK. You two are the same person. How strange, how strange. The 10,000 gods glanced back and forth between the past self and the present self. They clicked their tongues in amazement. Qiu Moon also glanced back and forth between the two Lu Mings. She was extremely curious. Don't worry. Even though we're two people, we're still one. We're both Lu Ming, said Lu Ming's current self. Lu Ming, your past self is not good enough. He only has the strength of the 7th godly emperor layer. You have to catch up, said the 10,000 gods, staring at his past self. His past self's cultivation level was indeed the 7th godly emperor layer. After all, his past self had cultivated the 10,000 Cosmos Tau formula. He had many different kinds of godly strength. Now he could control 21 kinds of godly strength and secret skills. Now that he had broken through to the 7th godly emperor layer, it was already an amazing speed. It had something to do with his talent and the cultivation conditions of the Dragon Clan's mother planet. Of course, it also had to do with Ao Qian and Fei Huang's guidance. 10,000 gods, let's go to the Primordial Godly Lake. I came here for the Primordial Godly Lake. Lu Ming went over and said, "Let's go," said the 10,000 gods. He turned around and led the way. Lu Ming's past self and present self, as well as Qiu Moon and the others, followed closely behind him. Very quickly they left the huge city and flew west. Boom boom boom. After flying for a while, they heard a deafening rumble. It was the sound of waves crashing. After a while they could see the lake more clearly. The vast and boundless lake was like a vast ocean, vast and boundless. Lu Ming stood in the sky and channeled the taboo power into his eyes. He could barely see the other side of the lake. There was a huge city there. That was the city on the western shore of the Primordial Godly Lake. In the lake, huge waves rose to a height of over 10,000 meters. When they fell, they created a deafening explosion. It was terrifying. There were also huge whirlpools in some parts of the lake. The whirlpools spun crazily. The center was pitch black as if it could crush everything. The closer we get to the center of the Primordial Godly Lake, the more powerful the waves are. It's also more dangerous. Correspondingly, we can obtain more opportunities. There are almost no opportunities in the outer area. Let's enter the Primordial Godly Lake from the center, said the 10,000 gods. All right. Lu Ming and the others nodded. They continued flying into the Primordial Godly Lake. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, above the Primordial Divine Lake, there was a terrifying howling wind. It was like a sharp blade. Lu Ming and the rest could only set up defenses on their bodies to block it. Very quickly they had flown 30,000 li. Let's go down from here and slowly move forward. We should be able to withstand it. I'm afraid something unexpected will happen if we go further, said the 10,000 gods. Chapter 42:11. Lu Ming and company naturally had no objections to the Myriad God's suggestion. After all, the Myriad God had been cultivating here for many years and was most familiar with the environment. The closer to the center of the Primordial Divine Lake, the stronger it was. The eggshell of the Primordial Divine Spirit was at the bottom of the lake. The other divine herbs and treasures were also at the bottom of the lake. To obtain these treasures, they had to search from the bottom of the lake and sink to the bottom of the lake. If they were to fly too far and sink to the bottom of the lake, the danger of the environment below might exceed what they could withstand. If they were not careful, they might die. They would first sink to a safe area before slowly pushing forward. This way the power would gradually increase. If they could not withstand it, they would not be caught off guard and could slowly retreat. This was the safest method. Immediately, they set up layers of defense around themselves before diving into the lake. Many shields appeared around Lu Ming's past self. This was the origin secret skill Tianxian Shield. The current Profound Sky Shield was many times stronger than before. It enveloped his body tightly. As for his present body, he used his great defensive technique to cover his body with a layer of light. Boom. The moment Lu Ming entered the lake, he felt like dozens of mountains had crashed into him. Even his great defensive technique trembled. What a powerful force. This lake water is no ordinary lake water. It contains an ancient aura as though it was condensed from divine power. Lu Ming sensed it carefully and found that the surrounding lake water was extremely viscous and heavy. When a wave came, it was as though dozens of divine mountains had crashed into it. The force was astonishing. This lake water seemed to be condensed from ancient divine power, like the divine power of a primordial divine spirit. Of course, it was impossible for this to be the divine power of a primordial divine spirit. It only resembled it a little. If it was real, they would not be able to withstand it. Fortunately, the strength of the lake water was something they could withstand. Because the 72 primordial divine spirits were born here, the lake water here is filled with the chi of the primordial divine spirits, becoming violent and terrifying. It's a pity that we can't absorb it. However, there are some treasures that we can find in such an environment, the Myriad God explained. Everyone kept sinking. The primordial divine lake was very deep, and they sank for a few thousand miles before reaching the bottom of the lake. Although there weren't any huge waves at the bottom of the lake, there was an undercurrent surging with terrifying power. However, this was still within the acceptable range of everyone. This place has already been explored by others. We don't need to waste time. Let's move forward, Myriad gods Tao. Everyone stepped forward, breaking through the waves. In next to no time, they traveled another 20,000 kilometers. The further they went, the greater the pressure of the waves became. In addition, there was also a terrifying pressure at the bottom of the lake. This kind of pressure was ancient, like the pressure of a primordial god. This kind of pressure could not only affect the body but also the mind and soul. They seemed to hear a terrifying roar coming from ancient times. Those with weak willpower would find it difficult to continue moving forward. At this point, the two senior sisters of Autumn Moon were already struggling. Lu Ming, on the other hand, felt fine. Although Lu Ming's cultivation was the lowest among all of them, he was still very strong. However, he had a forbidden body. His soul was scattered in all his cells, and he could control all kinds of ancient secret techniques, so it was easy for him to resist. As for his past self, his cultivation was only at the 7th Divine Emperor realm, but his body was emitting all kinds of light and all kinds of origin secret techniques to resist the pressure around him. In addition, Lu Ming's willpower was strong enough. The pressure of the primordial gods was not too strong for Lu Ming. Senior sisters, are you all right? Chiu Yu looked at her two senior sisters worriedly. We're fine. Let's keep moving. Autumn Moon's two senior sisters said. They were all geniuses and had their pride. Seeing that Lu Ming's cultivation was lower than theirs, they naturally did not want to give up. They continued moving forward, and soon, they had traveled another 10,000 kilometers. The pressure was even stronger. Chiu Yu's two senior sisters were already panting. However, when they arrived here, they finally found something. That's a divine power source orb. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. He saw a few crystal-like things not far away. They were divine power source orbs, treasures that could help people activate origin secret techniques. Such treasures were very useful when one was at the lower level of the immortal state. Many powerful clans usually bought them to cultivate their juniors. The price of such consumables had always been high and they were very popular. One of Autumn Moon's senior sisters was the closest to them. She stepped forward and put away the divine power source orbs. Then she continued moving forward. Soon she found something else. Not far away, a divine medicine was swaying at the bottom of the lake. Needless to say, a divine medicine that could grow in such an environment was extraordinary. Lu Ming's past self was closer. He stepped forward and picked the divine medicine, then returned and gave it to his current self. The past and the present were one, so there was no need to talk about them. The treasures that were useful to his past self were kept by his past self. The treasures that were useful to his current self were kept by his current self. This divine medicine contained powerful life energy and was most suitable for the cultivation of a forbidden body. It was most suitable to keep it with his current self. Next, they continued to make discoveries. Divine power source orbs, divine medicine, divine origin flowers, and other things would be found from time to time. Those who were closer to them would pick them up. However, when they traveled about 10,000 miles, the two senior sisters of Autumn Moon had almost reached their limit and could no longer move forward. If they continued, they would exceed their limits and be injured. Not only would their bodies be injured, but their souls would also be injured. Physical injuries were easy to recover, but soul injuries were more troublesome. We won't continue. We'll stop here and explore the surrounding area. You can continue. The two senior sisters of Autumn Moon said. Senior sisters, be careful. Autumn Moon said with concern. Junior sisters of Autumn Moon, don't worry. We will be careful. I wish you all the best. One of the senior sisters said with a smile. After that, the two senior sisters of Autumn Moon stayed behind and explored horizontally, not approaching the center of the primordial divine lake. Lu Ming and the others continued to move forward. If they wanted to find a treasure like the primordial divine spirit eggshell, they had to go to the center of the primordial divine lake. Without the two senior sisters of Autumn Moon, their speed suddenly increased. Soon they traveled another 20,000 miles. This place was already 90,000 miles away from the shore of the lake. The pressure here was even stronger. Lu Ming's past self felt the strong pressure, and the heavenly mystic shield was constantly vibrating. After all, the cultivation of his past self was still a little low, so he was facing a lot of pressure. Chapter 42:12. After all, his past self only had the strength of the 7th godly emperor layer. It was already a miracle that he had made it this far. His past self could withstand the pressure of the soul, but the pressure of the cultivation level was a bit difficult for him. At that moment, his present self walked over and used his great defensive technique to protect his past self. That made the pressure on his past self lessen. On the way they found many things, but unfortunately, they didn't find the original godly spirit's eggshell. When they were 120,000 li away from the shore, Suddenly Autumn Moon's eyes widened and she looked in a certain direction. There was something on the ground that was emitting a milky white light. Pure and terrifying energy was emanating from it. That thing was only the size of a fingernail, but it was like a sun, constantly emitting energy. The original godly spirit's eggshell. It's the original godly spirit's eggshell. Ah, we're lucky. The 10,000 gods smiled and said, Miss Autumn Moon, it's yours. Take it. Young master, do you want it? Autumn Moon looked at Lu Ming's past self. She knew that Lu Ming's past self had cultivated all kinds of godly strength. The original godly spirit's eggshell was very helpful to him. No need. You found it, so take it. There must be more at the bottom of the lake. The past self smiled. Autumn Moon didn't insist. She nodded and walked towards the original godly spirit's eggshell. When she arrived next to the original godly spirit's eggshell, Autumn Moon's heart suddenly emitted a powerful 9-colored light. They could vaguely see a 9-orifice heart. The sacred heart of 9 orifice. Autumn Moon's sacred heart of 9 orifice appeared and a 9-colored light enveloped the original godly spirit's eggshell. Then the original godly spirit's eggshell was absorbed by the sacred heart of 9 orifice. A powerful aura emanated from Chiu Yu's body, but it was retracted in the next moment. She couldn't refine the original godly spirit's eggshell so easily. She had to refine it slowly. After discovering the original godly spirit's eggshell, they were excited and continued moving forward. After a short time they found another one the size of a fingernail, but this time there were other people nearby. A prodigy from the Primordial Divine Lake also discovered the Primordial Divine Spirit eggshell. However, under the pressure of the myriad gods, the other party could only retreat. This piece of Primordial God eggshell was put away by Lu Ming's past self. But from then on their good luck seemed to have run out. After searching for half a day, they didn't find a single piece of primitive God Spirit eggshell. They didn't even find one the size of a fingernail. At this time, they were already about 200,000 miles away from the lakeside. At this point the pressure was already terrifying. Rumble. At the bottom of the lake, the undercurrent was surging violently. Moreover, it contained a terrifying pressure that continuously battered their bodies. In front of them, there seemed to be a terrifying power that was like a barrier. They advanced a few times but they were pushed back by that power. This is the limit. Every time I come here I'll be forced out. Myriad gods Tao. You didn't even go there once? Lu Ming's present body asked. No. I'm guessing that there's definitely a great opportunity inside. Unfortunately I can't enter. The power is too strong. The myriad gods shook their heads. I don't know if my taboo power can break it. I'll give it a try. Wait for me. Lu Ming's present body stepped forward. Young master, be careful. Chiu Yu said worriedly. Don't worry, I'll be fine. I'll do my best. Lu Ming smiled. He then took a step forward and dashed forward. Boom. A powerful force rushed toward Lu Ming. Break for me. Lu Ming shouted. The taboo power completely erupted and gathered on his palm. Lu Ming slashed out with his palm with all his strength. Boom. Lu Ming's palm collided with the force in front of him, and a violent explosion erupted. A large amount of lake water in the surroundings was repelled to the sides. Lu Ming's body trembled and his arm kept shaking. However, Lu Ming's eyes lit up. He felt that the force in front of him wasn't unbreakable. Under the attack of the taboo power, there seemed to be a flaw and a gap was torn open. Alright, let's continue, Lu Ming shouted and pushed the taboo power to the extreme. His palm struck out continuously. Boom, boom, boom. Intense rumbling sounds continued to ring out, and the entire area trembled. The lake water was being expelled, forming a vacuum. Although Lu Ming's body kept shaking, the force in front of him was indeed slowly being torn apart. Bam, bam. With every tear, Lu Ming took a step forward, and the ground under his feet shook violently. However, with every step, Lu Ming took another step forward. In this way, Lu Ming took more than 10 steps in a short period of time, advancing more than 10 meters. However, what made Lu Ming's heart sink was that the further he advanced, the stronger the force became. The pressure on Lu Ming was also increasing. After a few more steps, Lu Ming's body kept shaking. He was under great pressure. He used all his strength to attack, but it was difficult to continue tearing apart that force. Almost there, thought Lu Ming. He had the feeling that he was about to tear apart that force. As long as he could tear it apart, he would be able to enter the next area. However, the pressure was too great. Lu Ming couldn't break through it no matter what he did. A Shen rod. Lu Ming shouted in his heart. He took out the Bing Shen rod and attacked with all his might. However, it was useless. It wasn't a problem of attacking power. In terms of attacking power, the 10,000 gods were much stronger than him. In addition, there were many divine arch-gods in the primordial sacred lake. Those above the 4th level of the divine god realm, and even those at the 7th, 8th, and 9th level of the divine god realm were stronger than Lu Ming. However, none of them could break through. Lu Ming was able to achieve this because of the special nature of the forbidden force. Therefore, using the ice Shen rod and attacking with his hand had the same effect. It was the effect of the forbidden force. I can't break it. Unfortunately, my cultivation is still too low. The forbidden force isn't strong enough. If I could break through to the divine emperor realm, I would be able to break through this force and enter, thought Lu Ming. Let's try again. Lu Ming gritted his teeth. He squeezed out the last bit of energy in his body and attacked with all his might. Bang. Finally, Lu Ming took another step forward. He took another step forward. He was even closer to breaking through, but he still didn't break through. He was still a bit away. Lu Ming felt that he was about to break through. Suddenly Lu Ming's eyes widened. At this point he could vaguely see the scene behind the force. Previously, their vision had been completely blocked. They couldn't see what was in front of them. But now Lu Ming could vaguely see something. He was shocked. Chapter 42:13. Lu Ming was shocked. The primordial god spirit eggshell. He could vaguely see the primordial god spirit eggshell in front of him. And it wasn't just one piece but many pieces. And they weren't as small as a fingernail but very large pieces. Shocking, extremely shocking. Break in. I must break in. Lu Ming roared in his heart. Although these primordial god spirit eggshells weren't very useful to the taboo body, they were very useful to Wan Shen, Autumn Moon, and his past self. Especially his past self. Although the past and present were two separate entities, they were still one. The stronger his past self was, the stronger he was. It also meant that Lu Ming was stronger. If he could get the primordial god spirit eggshells in front of him, his cultivation would definitely skyrocket. Whether it was the origin divine power factor, the primordial god body, or the origin secret technique, they would all be very helpful. He had to rush in. He had to get it. However, he had reached his limit and couldn't take another step forward. How should he break in? Right, the purple copper coffin. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. Let's give it a try. The purple copper coffin should have a lot to do with the primordial god spirit. As long as he took out the purple copper coffin, he should be able to pass. With a thought, the purple copper coffin appeared in Lu Ming's hand. Go over and prepare to break through. As soon as the purple copper coffin appeared, Wan Shen's past self knew what his present self was going to do. He shouted and rushed forward with Autumn Moon and Wan Shen, arriving behind Lu Ming. Boom. Lu Ming covered the purple copper coffin with his taboo power, raised it and smashed it forward. The void in front of him shook violently as the powerful force kept exploding. Then it was forcefully penetrated, creating a hole. It's really effective. Lu Ming's eyes lit up and he revealed a look of joy. The purple copper coffin was really effective. He didn't even need to open it to directly disperse the force in front of him. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have gone through so much trouble and would have used the purple copper coffin to attack. Behind him, Wan Shen's eyes also lit up. Today there was hope for him to set foot in this place that he had never set foot in. Boom, boom, boom. Lu Ming swung the purple copper coffin and continued to bombard the force in front of him. The force was constantly being torn apart and the hole was getting bigger and bigger. It was enough for them to pass through. Quick, get in. Lu Ming's present body roared. Go. Myriad God bellowed. With past body, Autumn Moon's figure flashed as she charged towards the hole. Her figure sank into the hole as she broke through the force that was holding her back. In the end, Lu Ming's present body also dashed into the hole. As soon as he rushed in, the force automatically gathered together. When Lu Ming broke in and saw the situation inside, his eyes widened. The eggshell of a primordial god. As far as the eye could see, the ground was littered with the eggshells of primitive gods. The small ones were only the size of a fingernail, while the larger ones were the size of a palm or a plate. Most shocking of all, there were a few pieces of eggshell that were several times bigger than a water tank. There were a total of 3 such eggshells. They were shaped like bowls placed on the ground, but their diameters were more than 3 meters. Within the eggshells, there were strands of light emanating from them. Lu Ming put away the purple copper coffin and walked closer to take a look. He was even more alarmed. The largest pieces of eggshell actually contained some kind of liquid. The liquid was golden in color, as though gold had turned into liquid. It shimmered with an intoxicating luster. At the same time, an extremely rich and ancient aura emanated from the liquid. It was very similar to the blood of a primordial god, but at the same time, it was not. This is the egg white left behind from the eggshell that gave birth to the primordial god, Wuxia muttered to himself as his eyes widened. Egg white. The others were puzzled. That's right. The primordial gods in the primordial divine lake were all born from eggs. After they left, there was still egg white left behind. This is the egg white left behind after the primordial gods left. It's a peerless treasure. Those who cultivate divine power will reap unimaginable benefits if they absorb this egg white and eggshell. It seems that this area gave birth to 3 primordial gods, Wuxia exclaimed. There were 3 bowl-like eggshells with golden egg white inside. Clearly there were 3 primordial god eggs. The other small pieces of eggshell were naturally left behind when the primordial gods broke out of their shells. That's great. There are 3 eggshells. 1 for each of you. Lu Ming's present body smiled. He cultivated a forbidden body, so treasures left behind by primordial gods were not very useful to him. Besides, Qiuqiu had no need for these things. Qiuqiu only needed to devour metals or weapons made of metals. Of the 3 eggshells, the past body, autumn moon, and Wuxia would each have 1. Let's keep the smaller eggshells. Don't take these 3 big ones. We will cultivate directly in the eggshells. After all, these primordial god eggs were originally here. It's best if we absorb and refine them here, Wuxia said. Lu Ming and Autumn Moon naturally had no objections. Then the group began to put away the surrounding eggshells. The past body, Autumn Moon, and Wuxia split the eggshells equally. Lu Ming's present body did not take much. He only took some as a token. After all, they were not of much use to him. Then the past body, Autumn Moon, and Wuxia each entered an eggshell and sat down cross-legged. Immediately, the golden liquid in the eggshells moved. Like golden ribbons they wrapped around the 3 of them. The 3 of them looked solemn as they cultivated with all their might. It was as though they had turned into 3 primordial gods. This refinement will probably take a long time. I'd better go somewhere else. Lu Ming's present body pondered. Then he wandered around the area. He discovered that the area within a few hundred miles was enveloped by a powerful force. It was like a layer of restriction. If he wanted to enter this place, he had to break through this layer of power. It's very safe to cultivate here. No one will disturb me. Lu Ming smiled. The primordial god eggshells had been left here for so long without being taken away. This meant that no one had entered this place before. This time, if not for Lu Ming's taboo power and the purple copper coffin, they would not have been able to enter at all. Since others could not enter, it was naturally very safe to cultivate here. No one would disturb them. Therefore, Lu Ming planned to leave first and explore the area. Lu Ming walked to the side and took out the purple copper coffin. He planned to break through this force and leave this place first. However, what surprised him was that this time, he didn't encounter any obstructions. He actually passed through easily. Let's go to the core of the primordial divine lake to take a look. Lu Ming put away the purple copper coffin and walked towards the center of the primordial god lake. Along the way he collected some natural treasures. Chapter 42:14. The closer they were to the center of the primordial divine lake, the greater the pressure they faced. In the end, even when Lu Ming used the taboo power, it was very difficult for him to move an inch. I wanted to go to the center to see what's inside, but it seems like I won't be able to. Lu Ming shook his head slightly and decided to retreat. However, at this moment, Lu Ming's expression changed. This was because the purple copper coffin in his sea of consciousness had undergone a change. Lu Ming didn't control the purple copper coffin. The purple copper coffin flew out on its own. A force carried Lu Ming forward. Lu Ming felt his body lighten. The external force disappeared without a trace. It didn't affect him at all. The purple copper coffin carried Lu Ming toward the center of the primordial divine lake. It was extremely fast. It was as if the surrounding lake water didn't hinder it at all. In just a few breaths of time, they had flown an unknown distance away, and the purple copper coffin came to a stop. Lu Ming's gaze was first attracted by something in front of him. It was a weapon. It was a war halberd. It was purple in color and seemed to be made of purple copper. Lu Ming suddenly felt that the material of this war halberd was similar to the purple copper coffin. The war halberd was about 3 meters long. It was stuck in the ground. It didn't seem to have any fluctuations or spirituality. It looked like an ordinary weapon. I want to eat, I want to eat. At this moment Qiuqiu cried out. Its voice was filled with eagerness and anticipation. It was originally a bracelet on Lu Ming's wrist. At this moment, two eyes appeared on the bracelet. They stared at the war halberd with burning flames. However, it seemed like it couldn't charge out. There was a terrifying pressure here. It was only fine in Lu Ming's hands. Crack. Before Lu Ming could think further, the purple copper coffin moved again. The sound just now came from the coffin lid. The coffin lid moved away on its own. Lu Ming narrowed his eyes. The purple copper coffin moved on its own again. In his vision, the purple copper coffin rarely moved on its own. During this period of time, it was rare for him to move. Why would it move on its own now? Was it because of that halberd? The purple copper coffin moved away, revealing a small gap. Immediately, a terrifying aura spread out from the gap. Lu Ming felt a terrifying pressure. His entire body tensed up as if his body was about to be torn apart. It's so scary. What's inside? Lu Ming roared in his heart. Compared to the copper coffin, it seemed that no matter how much progress he made or how much his cultivation base increased, he was still like an ant. When his cultivation was still weak, he would feel a terrifying pressure when the purple copper coffin was opened. It was as if he was an ant facing a divine dragon. Now, when he had the strength of the top of the 9th godly emperor layer, he still had the same feeling when the coffin was opened. The gap was too big. Fortunately, the lid of the purple copper coffin only opened a little before it stopped moving. Clang. At this time the halberd moved, releasing a king-chiang sound, and then it began to tremble slightly. Finally, the halberd left the ground and flew towards the purple copper coffin. So it's broken. Lu Ming's heart jumped. After the halberd left the ground, Lu Ming realized that the tip of the halberd was broken, as if it had been cut off by a sharp weapon. The halberd flew towards the purple copper coffin and quickly shrank. It turned into a beam of light and flew into the purple copper coffin through the gap. After the purple copper battle halberd flew in, the purple copper coffin closed with a kacha sound. The crack in the coffin disappeared, and the terrifying pressure disappeared without a trace. What a pity, what a pity! Chiu Chiu sighed. He almost beat his chest and stamped his feet. He was extremely annoyed. According to his instincts, the purple copper halberd was extremely attractive to him. If he had been able to devour it, he would have obtained unimaginable benefits. Unfortunately, the purple copper coffin had absorbed it. What does the purple copper halberd have to do with the purple copper coffin? It's obvious that the purple copper coffin was attracted by it and flew towards it, thought Lu Ming. The purple copper coffin was very mysterious. He had never been able to figure out the origins of the purple copper coffin. Now he had another question. At this time, the purple copper coffin moved again. A force wrapped around him and brought Lu Ming outside. After a few breaths, Lu Ming returned to where he had been and left the central region of the primordial divine lake. You brought me back. Aren't you going to bring me to other places? Lu Ming muttered. Lu Ming had thought that the purple copper coffin would bring him to other places in the central region of the primordial divine lake. Clearly he had thought too much. The purple copper coffin dashed into Lu Ming's sea of consciousness and floated quietly in it. There were no other strange movements. Lu Ming could only move on his own. However, without the help of the purple copper coffin, he could not get close to the central region of the primordial divine lake. He could only wander around the area and obtain some treasures. A day later, Lu Ming began his return. Finally, he left the primordial divine lake and returned to his residence. During the mid-autumn moon, the myriad god and company were cultivating there. Clearly it would not end anytime soon. There was no need for him to wait. After returning to his residence, he silently cultivated in search of a way to make a breakthrough. Rumble. Lu Ming had not cultivated for half a day when the entire world suddenly shook violently. What's going on? Lu Ming's expression changed. The tremors were too intense. It was as though the world was being turned upside down. It was definitely not simple. Lu Ming rushed out of the house. Rumble. Another deafening boom sounded. The sky and land shook violently once again. The entire primordial divine lake world was shaking. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Figures soared into the sky from all directions of the primordial divine lake. They stood in the void and looked up into the sky. The sound of tremors came from that void. Rumble. The tremors grew more and more intense, and the sky began to ripple like water. Chila. Following that, the sky was torn apart and a very long fissure appeared. Through the fissure one could see some scenes outside. One could see the starry sky of the universe outside, dotted with stars. In the starry sky of the universe, there were armies standing in the starry sky, exuding a somber aura. Heavenly Army. After seeing those figures, Lu Ming was shocked. Those figures were clearly Heavenly Army. They wore silver or golden armor and were led by divine generals. At a glance, there were at least tens of thousands of them. And this was only the tip of the iceberg. In reality, there were definitely more people. In addition, there were some incomparably huge figures that exuded terrifying fluctuations. They were bombarding the void and tearing it apart. Through the fissure, a terrifying aura emanated. The Lord of Heaven. Lu Ming's pupils constricted. The heavenly palace was here. Chapter 42:15. It was clear that the heavenly palace had arrived. Someone at the level of the Lord of Heaven was tearing the world wall of the primordial divine lake world and was about to charge in. The primordial divine lake world was different from the ordinary minor kiliocosms. The primordial divine lake world had a powerful world wall and was hidden in the dark void, constantly drifting. Unexpectedly, the heavenly palace could find the coordinates of the primordial divine lake world. Swish, swish, swish. Figures appeared in the sky of the primordial divine lake world. These figures all exuded an aura as heavy as a mountain. Each one of them was like an abyss, giving off an unfathomable feeling. Divine Masters. These were all Divine Masters. Lu Ming gasped a breath of cold air. That was because he saw at least 50 figures at a glance. These should all be Divine Master Realm existences. Divine Emperor Realm existences could not possibly have such powerful auras. The primordial divine lake world had more than 50 Divine Masters. This was absolutely terrifying. No wonder they dared to go against the heavenly palace. Among them, Lu Ming saw the primordial divine spirit that had saved them. There were also a few figures. Lu Ming also sensed a special aura, which was also the aura of the primordial divine spirits. Clearly, the primordial divine lake world had more than one purebred primordial divine spirit. Everyone return to the cities and activate the arrays of the 4 cities at any time. A primordial divine spirit said, his voice spreading throughout the primordial divine lake world. Yes. Yes, sir. Roars rang out one after another. Apart from the Divine Masters, everyone else flew back to the 4 giant cities. There were 4 giant cities in the 4 directions of the primordial divine lake. These cities were not only used for residential purposes. These 4 cities had arrays that could be combined to activate a powerful array. Lu Ming stood on the mountain peak, unmoving. The god lords hovered in the air, their gazes fixed on the crack. At this moment, the crack in the sky was getting bigger and bigger. Attack, stop them. A primordial divine spirit ordered. At the same time, his body swelled rapidly, turning into a primordial divine spirit. This was his true body. The true bodies of primordial divine spirits were abnormally tall. Boom. This primordial deity had a strange body. It had the head of a tiger and the body of a human. Its body was covered in scales. He held a spear in his hand and thrust it towards the crack. The spear was aimed at the Lord of Heaven who was tearing apart the world barrier. This was the attack of a primordial divine spirit in its prime. Its power was too terrifying. If it was in the universe, it could pierce through a galaxy. Even a heaven monarch would be severely injured if he was hit by such an attack, even if he didn't die. However, the Lord of Heaven's expression did not change. Your opponent is me. A cold voice sounded, and another figure appeared beside the Lord of Heaven. This was another Lord of Heaven, and it held a golden spear as it stabbed out. Clang. The 2 weapons clashed together, emitting a terrifying shockwave. Then both figures retreated at the same time. What a powerful force. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. The primordial divine spirit who had just attacked was definitely powerful enough. It was not weaker than the one who had saved them previously. However, the Lord of Heaven had blocked the attack. This Lord of Heaven was probably stronger than an ordinary Lord of Heaven. Attack. At this moment, the other Divine Masters of the primordial divine lake all attacked. One Divine Master had the power to destroy the world. With so many Divine Masters attacking together, it was earth-shattering. The terrifying shockwaves seemed to be able to pierce through the entire universe. These Divine Master Realm existences bombarded the torn world wall with terrifying attacks, trying to kill the Celestial Palace powerhouses who were tearing the world wall apart. However, when these attacks approached the torn world barrier, many beams of energy flew in from the outside. Each of these beams of energy was terrifying. They were all from the Divine Masters and there were dozens of them. The attacks from both sides collided near the world barrier, and an earth-shattering explosion occurred. A terrifying shockwave swept out in all directions. The shockwave directly hit the torn world barrier. Rumble. There was already a long crack in the world wall, but after being swept up by this force, the crack became even bigger. "Oh no, stop attacking!" An expert of the primordial divine lake shouted. It was clear that the heavenly palace had used their strength just now to tear the crack in the world wall even wider. At this moment, the crack in the world barrier was several times bigger than before. They could see the situation outside more clearly. In the starry sky, the heavenly soldiers and divine generals were lined up in rows. There were definitely more than 100,000 of them. In addition, there were many divine masters as well. There were more than 50 of them that could be seen and some that could not be seen. This time, the heavenly palace had also sent out a powerful force. The 9 Lord of Heaven are attacking together. How rare. A primordial divine spirit said. Primordial divine lake, do you think you can do whatever you want by hiding in the dark void? We have already captured your coordinates. We wanted to wait for a while and let you live a little longer, but you are in a hurry to die, so we have no choice but to fulfill your wish. A cold voice came from outside the world barrier. A tall figure appeared. He was shrouded in light, and his long golden hair danced in the wind. His aura was very intimidating. It was a Lord of Heaven. When the Lord of Heaven finished speaking, more and more figures appeared around him. Among them, 9 figures had the most intimidating auras. In addition, there were more than 60 figures with terrifying auras. Not all of them were from the heavenly humans. Some of them were from the top races in the universe, such as the angels and the demons. These were all divine master-level existences. The Lord of Heaven was only a title of the heavenly palace. Only the heavenly humans could receive this title. However, not all divine masters of the heavenly humans could receive the title of Lord of Heaven. The Lord of Heaven was a top existence even in the divine master realm. This time, the heavenly palace had sent 9 Lord of Heaven, leading a large number of divine masters to attack. Today, the primordial divine lake will disappear from the universe. The Lord of Heaven said domineeringly. How arrogant! Let's see who you can kill. Kill. In the primordial divine lake, the primordial divine spirit who had saved Lu Ming last time roared and charged forward. He punched out and the void shattered. The huge fist smashed toward the divine masters of the heavenly palace. The power of this punch was extremely terrifying, and some of the ordinary godly lords were shocked. Even an ordinary divine master would be instantly killed by such an attack. Swoosh. A Lord of Heaven attacked. His body was covered in dense heavenly power. A battle sword appeared in his hand and he slashed out, colliding with the fist of the primordial divine spirit. Chapter 42:16. The Lord of Heaven clashed with the primitive divine spirit's attack, creating an earth-shattering explosion. Then a figure retreated. The Lord of Heaven was the one who retreated. The Lord of Heaven was no match for the primitive divine spirit. The Lord of Heaven is only SOSO. Today, I will take the head of the Lord of Heaven as an offering to the primitive divine spirits. The primordial God spirit roared. His tall and sturdy body stepped forward, his aura surging wildly. The Lord of Heaven, who had just been pushed back, was stunned. Hong, let me be your opponent. A cold voice said. Then a figure appeared in the air. This was also a heavenly monarch. However, this heavenly monarch was a woman. She had long golden hair, fair skin, and peerless beauty. This was a female Lord of Heaven. Damning Lord of Heaven, you came at the right time. Let me see if you have improved over the years. The primitive divine spirit shouted. The primitive divine spirit who had saved Lu Ming and the others was called Hong. Most of the primitive divine spirits' names were one word. Hong's body was indomitable and in human form. His entire body was covered in scales. When he punched out, heaven and earth would explode. The power was terrifying to the extreme. Fortunately, this was the world of the primordial divine lake. It was formed at the beginning of the world and was extremely stable, just like the Dragon Clan's mother planet. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to withstand a battle between divine masters, just like the universe. In front of Hong, damning Lord of Heaven was as small as a speck of dust. However, no one dared to underestimate her. This was because damning Lord of Heaven was one of the most powerful Lords of Heaven in the heavenly palace. Damning Lord of Heaven stood there calmly. She reached out her finger and pointed it casually. Whoosh! A blast of energy shot out and collided with Hong's fist. There was no sound of collision, but Hong's face changed drastically. His body trembled and he was forced to retreat. A bloody hole had already appeared on his fist and blood was flowing out. Lu Ming could not help but swallow his saliva. This was the blood of a primordial god. It was such a waste for it to slip away like that. Hong, we haven't seen each other for many years. Your strength is still disappointing. Big Dream Lord of Heaven said calmly. Taking a step forward, a formless energy spread out towards Hong. Dream Force. Not good. Hong's face changed drastically. The primordial divine power in his body burst out crazily as he punched out with both his fists. Such an attack was absolutely terrifying. If it was in the universe, a galaxy would be destroyed by such an attack. However, such an attack could not stop the power that burst forth from the Lord of Heaven. However, he was only able to block a portion of it. There was still a portion that he was unable to block, and it continued to envelop Hong. The moment he was enveloped by this power, Hong's movements suddenly slowed down. He became a little dazed and his eyelids drooped as if he was about to fall asleep. Swoosh! Big Dream Lord of Heaven moved. He quickly approached Hong and pointed out another finger. Heavenly punishment. Big Dream Lord of Heaven said coldly in the air. A finger force pierced through Hong's forehead at an astonishing speed. At the critical moment, Hong roared to wake himself up. The primordial divine spirit burst out crazily, enveloping him. At the same time he tilted his head back. Blood splattered everywhere. Hong did not manage to dodge the attack completely and was hit. A bloody hole appeared on his forehead. However, he managed to avoid being hit in his vital parts, so he was not seriously injured. However, in his heart he was secretly afraid. That attack just now was really dangerous. You have improved since you were able to dodge my attack. However, that's all. Big Dream Lord of Heaven's cold voice resounded. If it wasn't for your dream force, I would not be afraid of you. If you have the ability, let's fight face to face, Hong roared. Ridiculous, Big Dream Lord of Heaven said coldly. She continued to use her dream force to attack. The scariest thing about the Great Dream Heavenly Lord was her great dream power. It was extremely terrifying. Her most terrifying record was when she made a move that made all the living beings in the entire galaxy fall asleep in an instant. It was truly terrifying to the extreme. She was known as one of the strongest Lord of Heaven because of this. How could she give up her strongest attack? Hong retreated again. However, the dream force was omnipresent and fast. No matter how Hong tried to dodge, he was still hit. He became a little dazed again and his movements slowed down. Heavenly punishment, kill. Big Dream Lord of Heaven said coldly. This time, a battle sword appeared in her hand. She stabbed the sword towards Hong's forehead. The power was stronger and faster than before. This time, Hong was unable to dodge it. Hong and Big Dream Lord of Heaven exchanged a few moves. It seemed to have taken a long time, but in fact it only happened in an instant. It was at this moment that another primitive god spirit arrived. This primordial immortal spirit was like a male lion. With a loud roar, the heavens and earth shook. Hong, who was about to fall asleep, was suddenly awakened. He fought back with all his might and blocked Dream Lord's attack. Lion, are you here to interfere? Then I'll kill you too. Big Dream Lord of Heaven said. Although she was a woman, she was domineering and charming. She continued to use her dream force. However, the primitive divine spirit, Lion, roared, shaking heaven and earth. It kept Hong and himself awake. He grabbed at Big Dream Lord of Heaven with his huge claws. When he clashed with Big Dream, the void shattered and turned into chaos. At the same time, Hong attacked again. You want to win with numbers? Attack together. Another Lord of Heaven roared. He wanted to help Big Dream Lord of Heaven. You don't need to interfere. Go deal with the others. Leave these two to me. Big Dream Lord of Heaven said coldly. The other Lord of Heaven and Divine Lords could only stop and attack the other Divine Lords of the Primordial Divine Lake. Kill? The other Divine Lords of the Primordial Divine Lake were fearless. Both sides fought. With so many Divine Masters fighting at the same time, it was too terrifying. The space was smashed into pieces. They directly entered the dark void and fought crazily in the dark void that was eternally withered. In the blink of an eye, the battle was over. The sky above the primordial divine lake world suddenly quieted down. Celestial soldiers and divine generals, attack and destroy the primordial divine lake world. Kill all the living beings inside. A cold voice sounded outside the world wall. Kill? Kill, kill, kill. Battle cries shook the sky. The army of celestial soldiers and divine generals approached the torn world wall. At a glance they could not see the end. There were more celestial soldiers and divine generals than expected. There were at least 200,000 of them. Array rise. With another roar, the celestial soldiers and divine generals separated into square formations and formed array formations. Obviously, these celestial soldiers and divine generals came prepared. They could set up array formations with each other. Dazzling light spread out and gathered in the sky. Then, several terrifying divine lights blasted toward the primordial divine lake world. Chapter 42:17. The heavenly soldiers and divine generals set up a grand formation. Terrifying divine light shot toward the primordial divine lake world. Wherever it passed, everything would be destroyed. Grand formation rise? Grand formation rise. Shouts came from the 4 cities in the primordial divine lake world. Following that, the 4 huge cities all emitted dazzling multicolored light. Above the 4 cities, 4 different weapons condensed. There were swords, sabers, spears and spears. In the sky above the huge city where Lu Ming was, a long spear condensed. The spear was huge. It crossed the sky above the city and cast a huge shadow. It was even bigger than the city. Clang. The spear vibrated and flew out as if it was controlled by a peerless expert. It thrust out many spear shadows and collided with the divine light. The weapons above the other 3 cities did the same. The weapons formed by the battle formations attacked the divine light. Boom, boom, boom. Explosions occurred above the primordial divine lake world. Violent energy waves swept in all directions. The attacks of the heavenly soldiers and divine generals were blocked. Continue. The heavenly soldiers and divine generals continued to activate the grand formation and attack. However, the attacks of the heavenly soldiers and divine generals were all blocked by the 4 cities. They did not suffer any losses. After all, the primordial divine lake world had survived from the age of incipient God. After many years of accumulation and development, its strength was very shocking. Otherwise, it would not have dared to fight against the heavenly palace. The heavenly palace's forces were not enough to take it down. The 2 sides were in a stalemate for a while. The heavenly palace did not make much progress. You guys continue to attack. We will support you. At this time, a few more figures appeared beside the torn world barrier. There were 3 of them. One of them was a heavenly human. As for the other 2, one was obviously an angel. The other had a strong blood chi. He should be from the blood race. Yale, the Lord of Heaven. Lu Ming's expression changed when he saw the heavenly human. This heavenly human was an old acquaintance. He was the Lord of Heaven of the heavenly palace who had attacked the Dragon Clan's mother planet. The angel race and blood clan experts beside him were clearly 2 divine masters as well. Be careful, it's the Lord of Heaven from the heavenly palace. Lu Ming immediately roared, his voice spread far and wide, reminding the people of Primordial Divine Lake. When the people of the Primordial Divine Lake heard this, they were also greatly shocked. In the heavenly palace, another Lord of Heaven appeared. It seemed that the number of Lord of Heaven that came from the heavenly palace was not 9, but 10. The Lord God of Heaven and the divine lords from before had already been blocked by the divine lord experts of the Primordial Divine Lake. The battle had gone into the dark void. There were no longer any divine masters in the Primordial Divine Lake. The Lord of Heaven of the heavenly palace has appeared. Attention, combine the 4 formations. A loud roar echoed in all directions. Buzz. The multicolored light in the 4 giant cities became even more dazzling. Lu Ming felt that the mountain peak beneath his feet was trembling slightly. Waves of primordial and ancient aura emanated from the mountain peak. It was as if a primordial divine spirit was about to awaken within the mountain peak. On the ground, a layer of ancient divine power flowed and then shot up into the sky. Lu Ming stood on the mountain peak and looked into the distance. He realized that the 4 giant cities seemed to have formed a resonance. A light shield formed and enveloped the 4 giant cities and the Primordial Divine Lake. In the blink of an eye, the Yale Lord of Heaven and the 2 divine lords had already made their move. The Yale Lord of Heaven took out a battle sword and slashed with all his might. A terrifying sword light slashed toward one of the giant cities. The sword light was so huge that it seemed as if it was going to cut the city in half. At the same time, the divine lords of the angel race and the blood kindred also made their moves. They attacked with 2 terrifying moves. The divine lords of the angel race and the blood kindred were also very powerful. They were definitely not ordinary divine lords. Even if they were not as strong as the Lord of Heaven, they were not much weaker. Kill. The heavenly soldiers and divine generals also made their moves. They activated the battle formation and blasted out terrifying divine light. Clang, 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 clang. The sound of weapons clashing resounded through the sky. The 4 weapons above the 4 giant cities shot up into the sky and collided with the attacks that were descending. However, this time the 4 weapons could not block the attacks from the sky. After all, there were 3 more divine lords attacking this time. The 4 weapons vibrated violently and were sent flying back. Cracks appeared on them. In the 4 giant cities, the experts of the Primordial Divine Lake frantically activated the array to repair the 4 weapons. However, the attacks of the Yale Lord of Heaven and the others arrived once again. This time, the 4 weapons could no longer withstand the attacks and were blasted apart. The remaining attacks landed on the light shield formed by the four cities. There was a loud explosion, but they were still blocked. Let's see how long this array can block me. The Yale Lord of Heaven stepped into the primordial divine lake world overbearingly and stood in the sky. The other two divine lords also stepped forward and stood on either side of the Yale Lord of Heaven. Kill, kill, kill. The heavenly soldiers and divine generals were also closing in on the city. Attack with all your might. Break their array and destroy the primordial divine lake. Their divine lords will also die. They are no match for us, the Yale Lord of Heaven ordered. Then he made his move. A terrifying aura exploded and the sky shook violently. An unimaginably powerful pressure pressed down on the city. Fortunately, the four cities were protected by the array. Otherwise, the Yale Lord of Heaven and the others would not need to attack. The pressure alone would be enough to crush everyone to death. Even a peak divine emperor would not be able to withstand such an aura and pressure. Even so, Lu Ming still felt a heavy pressure. It was as if a huge rock was pressing down on his heart, making it difficult for him to breathe. Dazzling sword light slashed down on the four cities. Then, bright holy light accompanied by blood-red light fell. Every attack could destroy the heavens and earth. In addition, there was also the divine light formed by the heavenly soldiers and divine generals. Boom, boom, boom. These attacks bombarded the light shield formed by the array, causing the light shield to shake violently. The entire ground rumbled loudly. Lu Ming felt that the mountain under his feet was shaking violently. Fortunately, he managed to block it in the end. However, the attacks of the Yale Lord of Heaven and the others did not stop. They continued to fall. The light shield shook violently and became more and more violent. It could be seen that the light barrier was slowly dimming under the constant attacks. If this continued, the light shield would be broken sooner or later. When that time came, no one would be able to survive against the Lord of Heaven. Lu Ming's face was grave. The primordial divine lake should have a backup plan. Lu Ming muttered. He did not believe that this was all the primordial divine lake had. How could they fight against the heavenly palace with this? They should at least have a trump card.